Part 53. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 543. This is really a narrow road between enemies, Kaylan secretly thought to himself. Last time it was an alley interception, this time it is a scandal. Does the Morgan Consortium like to engage in such dirty little tricks? Kaylan suddenly felt that those brainless villains in cool novels were quite suitable for this group of people. They were simply pure clowns with low IQs, and the things they did were a bit too low grade. Logically speaking, after the last assassination incident, the undead crew should have warned the Morgan Consortium once, but they still dared to come and cause trouble for themselves. Maybe they were impatient after living comfortably for too long and wanted to find something for themselves. Stimulate. But soon, Kaylan figured it out. The only people who knew about the existence of the Immortal Crew Club and received warnings were probably the patriarchs of the Morgan family. As for the senior executives in the consortium, I'm afraid they are not even. I have never heard of the name Undead Crew. Those who don't know are fearless, even if the head of the Morgan family has issued the highest level ban. In their eyes, this ban is at the level of family law. Among the descendants of such a big family, there will always be some smarty guy. From the perspective of these guys, the reason why the Parents Association forbade them from troubling the relic hunter was simply because the first operation failed, which caused the Morgan family to lose face in the upper class circles, although this matter has not been exposed. But anyone with a little bit of brains can guess that the identity of the mastermind behind this is the Morgan family. But the situation now is completely different. This is no longer a matter of losing face. In the face of a series of huge interests associated with this ancient warship, the warnings from parents can no longer restrain them. The last operation failed, and being severely scolded has long filled these people's hearts with resentment, and this time, it happened to be a good opportunity to take revenge. Not only to vent the bad temper that was not vented last time, but also for the core interests of the Morgan family and the Morgan Consortium. Whether these people plan to use this video to threaten themselves or simply use the scandal to unseat themselves, it is more important than it would be better to watch his competitor yet take the lead in this project. If they don't take advantage of this opportunity, they will definitely be suppressed by Yes family in the next 10 or 20 years. These people have long forgotten the old man's warning. They firmly believe that as long as things are done well this time, the parents will not only not punish them, but will also look at them with admiration. This is like playing chess. As long as if you can achieve the final victory, no matter how many moves you lose in the early stage, no one will care about it after the chess game is over. It seems that the warning from the Undead Crew Association is of little use. If these guys don't really suffer, I guess they won't know how to restrain themselves. Just when Kaylan was thinking this, his phone suddenly vibrated. The call was from the Hound, and there was also a text message with a video link. Kaylan, trouble has come to your door, Hound said. Someone wants to mess with you. The video in the link has been posted to major forums. Although the administrators of each forum are constantly deleting it, except for in addition to those first-level accounts that were registered in batches, there are also many normal users who uploaded this video after their accounts were stolen by hackers. The total number of downloads has exceeded 10 million, and the number of views is even higher. The Hound took a breath and continued, although I don't know if they used computer technology to forge the content in the video, we believe you are not that kind of person. After all, a beauty like Miss Soma was sent to you in the first place. You don't even have any food in your mouth, let alone these two ladies who are not as good as the eldest lady. Oh, I can't explain a sentence or two clearly, just watch the video for yourself. Kaylan clicked on the link. This is an edited video. The previous clips of Kaylan extracting the tooth of the flight attendant and interrogating the two people did not appear in the video. At the beginning of the video, he asked the two flight attendants to sit on the seats and then handcuffed them. The scene where two people are handcuffed. What a quote out of context. Kaylan sighed helplessly. This kind of scene was seen by netizens who didn't know what was going on. Coupled with some misleading titles, anyone would naturally go to that aspect. I thought, especially after I took out 2 more black hoods and put them on their heads. When he was even more speechless, the second half of the video was completely blacked out, leaving only the sound, but the sound without the picture was not the 2 women's begging for mercy and Ian's explanation, but a breathtaking paragraph. After listening to it, I can't help but blush, subconsciously turn down the volume, or look for the ambiguous sound from the headphones. These ambiguous voices were exactly the same as the pronunciation of the 2 stewardesses. Kaylan was basically certain that this audio was specially recorded by the 2 women in advance. The person who edited this audio is also a master. The connection between the 2 audio tracks is extremely smooth and natural, and there is no trace of transition at all. It sounds like Kaylan started to violate her eagerly after the camera was hacked. 2 stewardesses arrived. Although there is no picture and only sound, it is difficult to become ironclad evidence in a legal sense, but it makes it easier for people to imagine. It is completely enough to guide public opinion. People who don't know the truth will definitely regard Kaylan as a perverted person after seeing these things. No, the word sexual is no longer enough to describe the degree of perversion of the protagonist of the video. An idiom can't help but pop up in Ian's head: dressed beast. If this kind of thing really happened to any of the top executives of ARC, the news headlines the next day would be that the top executive publicly apologized and resigned. If this happened to an executive of a certain consortium, there would be 2 situations: 1, the consortium does not want to protect this person, directly expel him and take him to court and demand huge compensation. 2, the consortium decides to protect this person next, consider this person, falsely fire him, let him change from light to dark, or issue an apology statement, and declare that he will no longer be allowed to hold any important positions. But no matter which method is used, during this period of time, the stock prices of several stocks are bound to plummet. But the fact is, similar things happen almost every day, but very few of them are actually exposed. To be honest, not many executives of large conglomerates and young masters of wealthy aristocrats have a clean private life. This is almost a tacit thing among the upper class. Everyone is the same anyway, so naturally no one will use it. This kind of thing makes a fuss. If this kind of move is not performed well, it will be a lose-lose situation. However, Kaylan is different. He comes from a lower class background and has no background. Those people don't know the existence of the Immortal Crew Society at all, so in their eyes, Ian's only background is Sophia Soma's fiancé, and this fiancé, it seems that he is not well received by the Soma family. It is precisely for this reason that they were so unscrupulous when they brought up Kaylan. Kaylan couldn't help but feel a little irritated. Although flies and mosquitoes cannot bite you, they are still very annoying if they keep buzzing in your ears. Of course, he could dig up all the romantic affairs of the senior executives of the Morgan Consortium and throw them online, but apart from making netizens more happy, doing so will basically not help the matter itself. And if Kaylan does this, it would be acknowledging that the content of this video is true, so he would expose each other's scandals to criticize each other. This is not the ending Kaylan wants. Killing 1,000 enemies and damaging yourself by 800 is nothing to show off. If he wants to fight back, the first thing he has to do is to regain the right to speak. Kaylan turned off the video, then opened the dialing interface, entered a series of numbers that completely did not comply with ARC's communication number encoding rules, and pulled out. The boring beep sound lasted for a full minute before the other end of the phone was picked up. A lazy and elegant mature female voice sounded on the other end of the receiver. "Hello. Is it Ms. Demeter?" Kaylan asked. "No one else will answer the number I tell you except me," Demeter said unhurriedly. "I need the support of the Immortal Crew Association," Kaylan said straight to the point. "You once promised me that I can borrow the power of the Immortal Crew Association within a limited scope." Kaylan may not be able to let the undead crew directly uproot the Morgan Consortium, but it is still perfectly okay to ask them to provide some operational conveniences. Is it because of the video file? Well, I need control over ARC's major media. I think this should be just a trivial matter for the undead crew. Of course, we can agree to your request, but I am a little curious about what you plan to do after you gain this control. Demeter asked with interest. Are you planning to completely block this news? No, this kind of thing must not be handled coldly. Blocking the news at this time will actually help those guys. In the eyes of the public, doing so is trying to cover up. Aren't you afraid that the topic will continue to ferment? It is useless to ban discussion of this matter at this time. The vast majority of people on the internet have already seen this video. The remaining people who have not seen it will also look for those who have been banned out of curiosity. The resources, the total number of downloads has now exceeded 10 million times. Including the copy part, the stock of private resources is enough for everyone in ARC to see this video, not to mention the group of people with ulterior motives who are adding fuel to the fire. Kaylan paused and said 4 words, it's better to block things than to open them up. So what? I decided to release the full version of the video and make public some of the evidence that has been found. Although doing so is equivalent to declaring war with the Morgan Consortium, I think they will not try to use physical means like last time. Erase me. You can rest assured that if the Morgan Consortium violates the rules of the game, they will definitely be severely punished, Demeter said. The rules of the game, so, in fact, the matter has never been out of the hands of the undead crew. You could have arrested that person, or directly cut off the video he uploaded to the internet, but you did nothing. Just watch what happened. When this situation develops, well, can I think that this is also one of the assessment contents of the undead crew for me? Okay, Demeter did not hide it, but admitted it openly. If you want to become one of us, you not only need to face threats from the outside, but also deal with the conflicts within the ARC. You guessed it right, this is indeed one of the assessment items for you, but it was not planned, but was added temporarily by us. It seems that the holiday you reserved for me will be cancelled in advance, Kaylan teased. Compared with heretical sects, the Morgan Consortium's problem can only be regarded as an episode to adjust the status. If you are too lazy to deal with it, you can also give up this assessment. This is a bonus question, but you will not be deducted if you don't answer it. Even if you do nothing, the Morgan Consortium will not be able to shake your position as the person in charge of the S-019 ruins. But my reputation will be completely ruined by them. I think you don't want to be regarded as a perverted sadist by the public, right? Anyway, this period of time is idle, so I will accompany them to have fun bar. It all depends on your own wishes. Demeter repeated what she had said to Kaylan several times, but there is one thing I want to ask you. What's up? Since you have decided to deal with this matter head-on, can you guarantee that the direction of public opinion will follow the trajectory you envisioned? You want to remind me that it's easy to hide from an open gun, but hard to guard against a hidden one, right? Kaylan smiled. I didn't say that we should have a war of words with the opponent openly. Shouldn't we use both hands to do this kind of thing? Sees, do you want a two-pronged approach? Then why did you only apply to us for control of the major media? If you need other help, the undead crew will also be able to provide it. Every corner of the entire ARC is under our control, it's very clear. Since we are playing games, there is no point in cheating, Kaylan said. If it weren't for the extremely imbalance of resources between me and them, I wouldn't even have the intention to ask you for this permission. You're confident? At least I'm confident in dealing with them. If it doesn't work, wouldn't I still have you guys to help me wipe my butt? P.S. Thanks to bookfriend 20180530112942022 for the 1500 starting coins, Aot Mang for the 500 starting coins, thanks to Chinyuka Yufeng for the 100 starting coins. It's almost the end of the month, and it's the last day. If you still have monthly votes left in your hands, please vote. Kidian has recently launched a new writer's benefit. If you vote for more than 1,000 chapters in a single month, you can draw a lottery, and you can draw extra manuscript fees and recommendation slots. Now there are already 917 votes, and there are still 83 votes left. If you have votes, please help. Brothers, please. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 544. In K. Ian's plan, the first step in counterattack is to use these big media channels to publish the complete version of this video. Of course, some necessary small means are still indispensable. For example, for the title of this video, he will not choose a title that is defensive or whitewashing. Compared with the serious official explanation, a title called The Video Transport Flight Attendant Handcuffs and Headgear Video Full Version 15 minutes and 26 seconds unabridged will obviously be more explosive. After people click on the video driven by curiosity and find that there is nothing they want to see, they can then strike while the iron is hot and release Colonel Roland's bribery records and Anaheim's internal financial reports. Of course, the latter is K-Lan needs to use some little tricks to get it. K-Lan will not directly point the finger at the Morgan Consortium and tell the public that it is the Morgan Consortium that wants to discredit him. If he does this, the Morgan Consortium will only veto it and then backfire, and the situation will fall into a quagmire of back and forth, for the Morgan Consortium, in other words. As long as they can drag it out and let the bad influence of the edited version of the video ferment and heat up among the public, they will win. Although this win cannot remove K-Lan from his position as the person in charge of the ruins, the impact on his personal reputation is immeasurable, and will even involve the hunting god hunting group, Zofia Soma and Ye Yan and the Ye family behind him. This impact will not only be reflected in a series of data such as stocks and revenue, but also has a power that cannot be ignored in places other than data. K-Lan still remembers that 3 years ago, a company that produced auto parts went bankrupt due to fraud. 2 executives were imprisoned. One of them served 1.5 years of his sentence safely, and the other was in prison. He died unexpectedly in the 4th month. The cause of death was rectal tear and increased bleeding. According to official news, the prisoner's rectal tear was caused by severe constipation, and no prison guard or prisoner was punished for his death. And this guy who died of a rectal tear had exposed a copper smelting scandal a few years ago. Although the prosecution was eventually withdrawn due to insufficient evidence, it does not mean that this matter will be forgotten as time goes by. Before this man was imprisoned, he would often receive anonymous emails containing dead rats, razor blades, or excrement. He reported the case to the security department. The security department also had a completely perfunctory attitude and would not report the matter after taking notes. Further investigation, if it weren't for the fact that this person was the only son of the boss of the auto parts company, he would have lost his job in the month when the scandal broke out. What K-Lan has to do is to publish these evidences one by one, and then guide the people to deduce the correct answer on their own. In this process, neither the evidence nor the conclusion are actually the most important. What is important is it lies in this guidance process. Since the birth of human society, this problem has been plaguing rulers of all ages. Otherwise, there would be no such famous saying as "it is better to guard against the people's mouth than against the river." 2 days later, Fleet 0. In addition to the nominal flagship Yagunactor, the second flagship of this fleet is undoubtedly the only Gangfeng-class aircraft carrier battleship New Dawn in the fleet. Since the three-dimensional defense circle of the S-019 ruins has not yet been completed, K-Lan spent the past 2 days on the New Dawn. However, the conditions on this number 2 flagship cannot be described as make-do. Apart from anything else, the standard of 3 meals a day can reach the level of a star hotel. This place is too close to the Ark. All the ingredients were shipped directly from the Ark by transport ships. After the staff in the logistics kitchen took the fresh fish out of the ice water and defrosted it, the ingredients could even jump off the chopping board. After enjoying a meal of garlic grilled fish with rich red sauce, K-Lan wiped his mouth, adjusted the angle of his seat, and pulled a keyboard in front of him. Come on. A holographic virtual screen with a length of more than 3 meters spread out in front of him. The pages of various forums, news portals, and online communities were divided into hundreds of independent windows of different sizes, which were densely stacked on the screen. 30 minutes ago, the prepared information and full version of the video were released by major media. Now it is time to test the results. Just as Kaylan expected, the gimmick of the unabridged version of the video coupled with the traffic from major mainstream media has pushed these things to the second place on the popularity list in just 30 minutes. The index is close to the edited version of the video that ranked first. It is human nature to like to join in the fun, and on the internet, this behavior is called eating melon. The things originally revealed by the Morgan Consortium have been viewed countless times by netizens before they were banned. Although the discussion is still very popular, everyone is somewhat tired of aesthetics. But now there are new revelations related to it, and they are published by several major mainstream media known as official media. In addition, they also use this kind of headline that is completely opposite to the daily style of mainstream media. This topic it was detonated in an instant, and even the edited version of the video, whose clicks growth had begun to hit a bottleneck, saw a second surge in views. Kaylan took a few glances and found that the main public opinions on the internet were divided into 3 types. One was that they firmly believed that the edited version of the video was the truth, and that the so-called full version of the video by the official media was a disguised attempt to whitewash the parties concerned. I smelled a conspiracy, and began to analyze the connection between the video, bribery, and the bidding for the ruins. There is another one, and the one with the most people, who thinks that neither party is a good thing. Dog bites dog, and the same thing happens. But no matter which view you take, the vast majority of the people already know one thing. The competitor of the Yip Group, the Morgan Group, which had no chance of developing the S-019 ruins, was involved in this matter. Colonel Rowland's account records, the relationship between Blitz Machinery Parts Manufacturing Company and the Anaheim and Morgan Consortium. Anyone with a little bit of brain can imagine that there must be some ulterior secrets in it. The Morgan Consortium did not say anything about this. Instead, Anaheim Electronics held an emergency press conference, claiming that the matter had nothing to do with them and that it was Blitz Machinery Parts Manufacturing Company's own initiative in order to win the bid. They privately paid bribes for the project, and they also required all Blitzcrank executives to be reviewed and the accounts recalculated. But before their self-directed drama could begin, the military issued a statement. The evidence of Colonel Roland Walters' bribery was conclusive and had been handed over to the military court for processing, but Fleet Zero did not cooperate with Blitzcrank Mechanical Parts Manufacturing Company has any connection, and Blitz Machinery Parts Manufacturing Company has never participated in relevant bidding. Although this is just a normal statement, you must know that in the online media, the military's behavior has always been extremely low-key. This statement will be issued this time, which is a powerful message for Kaylan. Assists. Anaheim was immediately in chaos. They wanted to prove that they had nothing to do with the Blitzcrank briber, but a reporter's words directly stopped their spokesperson. Excuse me, since Blitz did not participate in the bidding meeting held by the military, why did the company bribe Colonel Roland? To put it more seriously, even if Blitz participated in the bidding meeting, why didn't it ask the person in charge of the bidding bribing an officer who knows how to do it, and bribing an officer in the combat force instead of the logistics department? Will it have any effect? The third question is, the Blitz Machinery Parts Manufacturing Company itself is not that big. 2 million. The credit was not a small sum of money for the company, and how did Blitzcrank executives withdraw such a large amount of money from the company's account without the approval of parent company Anaheim? This reporter comes from the ARC official TV station, the largest news media on the ARC, but these 3 questions were designed by Kaylan himself. With Anaheim's preparation, it is impossible for them to answer the sole 3 questions, especially after the military issued that statement. For the Morgan Consortium, the best choice at this time is to lose the car and save the commander, to let Anaheim admit that it used unfair means in the competition for the S-019 ruins exploration quota. But Kaylan knows very well that they will never do this. Although this move can keep the Morgan Consortium out of the matter, all previous efforts will be in vain with Anaheim's guilty plea. As Anaheim's largest shareholder, not only was it unable to prevent the Ye family from obtaining the right to explore the ruins, but he was also faced with an upcoming huge loss. It's like stealing the chicken but losing the rice. Just as Kaylan was smiling and waiting for the Anaheim spokesperson to answer this question, the live broadcast of the press conference was suddenly interrupted. Not only was the screen black for Kaylan, but everyone was broadcasting the press conference. The media in the meeting also encountered the same situation. Sure enough, you still want to fight to the death. Do you want to buy time by unplugging the network cable? Soon, Kaylan received the news from the press conference. The entire Anaheim company was attacked by hackers and an emergency interruption was issued. Hacker attack. Attacking yourself, Kaylan not only laughed dumbly, but he still complained. He still contacted the official White Hat organization as soon as possible and asked them to assist Anaheim in its defense. We have contacted people from the Anaheim Network Department, a White Hat told Kaylan. They told us that they have their own technical staff and do not need our assistance. Moreover, the company's database involves a lot of confidentiality technology. These things cannot be seen by outsiders. Okay, I understand, thank you for your hard work, Kaylan replied politely and ended the communication. Since I asked the White Hat to help you refuse, I'd better just invade directly. Ian's fingers began to tap quickly on the keyboard. It didn't take long for him to find the attacker who was wreaking havoc in Anaheim's internal database. What made Kaylan speechless was that after entering Anaheim's database, the attacker seemed to have returned to Anaheim. As familiar as my own home, what was deleted were useless information, discarded cases, and bills, while those useful information and drawings were encrypted and moved to other places. Kaylan has seen hackers who blindly do damage after an invasion, and hackers who operate with surgical precision, taking only what they want and leaving nothing else untouched, leaving no trace of excess, but this kind of he has never seen the person before. It's like a thief broke into your home. He took away all the genuine items in your collection, but smashed all the counterfeit items into pieces. Not only did he smash them into pieces, he also used a broom and bucket to remove the pieces. Swept it clean. Is this reasonable? But then again, if this hacker is really an enemy of Anaheim, then Anaheim's losses this time are really heavy. There is no backup of these precious technical data, so if it was evacuated like this, I don't know how many years it would take to return to the state before the attack. Kaylan thought for a while, but instead of stopping the hacker's actions, he directly locked the hacker's IP address and launched the attack. Besieging Wei and rescuing Zhao is also a kind of rescue operation. As for whether the gold and silver treasures that Wei has stolen from Zhao will be destroyed in the process, that is something that Kaylan cannot control. Kaylan adopted the simplest and most primitive attack method, but it was also the most difficult to defend against. DDoS attack. DDoS attack, whose Chinese name is Distributed Denial of Service Attack, refers to a method that initiates a large number of meaningless requests to the target host in a short period of time, consumes the other party's host resources on a large scale, and thereby paralyzes it. DDoS attacks are the simplest means of network attacks, but their biggest disadvantage is that the attacker also needs to consume a large amount of network resources. It is a routine that can harm the enemy by 1000 and damage itself by 800. Generally, hackers will use Trojan horse programs to hijack a large number of home computers as their own broilers to launch DDoS attacks, but at this time, Kaylan did not need any broilers at all. He holds in his hands the entire Zero fleet, and the control of the high-performance main brain of all the battleships in the fleet. P.S. Thank you to Contractor Yi for the 10,000 starting coins, thank you to the Useful Soap and Reading Giraffe for the 5,000 starting coins. Also, I asked for monthly tickets yesterday. Today is the last day of November. I was still short of the 1000 monthly ticket threshold by more than 100 tickets. There is no end of month double monthly ticket event this month. I received it today. More than 200 monthly tickets were issued, which completely exceeded my expectations. I am very grateful for everyone's support and encouragement. To add the group account, you can find it in the introduction of the details page of the book on the Kidian app. Click to expand the introduction and scroll to the bottom. There is a one-click application to join the group. To set up, you only need 500 fan points to apply. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 545. This hacker launched an attack on the Anaheim company's network server with only two purposes: first, to delay the deadlocked press conference; second, to destroy evidence. Even if there is an audit, it can also be disclosed to the outside world. Claiming that data has been destroyed by hackers can also create an image of a victim and gain public sympathy. Of course, Kaylan doesn't know how many people will sympathize with them in this situation. Although the live broadcast of the press conference was interrupted, the netizens who watched the live broadcast came back to their senses and the screen was black. The barrage in the live broadcast room was refreshing crazily, and the content was basically all greetings to the female relatives of Anaheim company executives. Public opinion has basically shown a one-sided trend. This time it was the Morgan Consortium's turn to block the news, but their request was rejected by the major mainstream media without exception. At the same time, in a light-tight room, 6 young people dressed like street gangsters, with high-end VR helmets worth hundreds of thousands of credits on their heads, sat cross-legged around a pile beside the low table of the computer case and mobile terminal. Hands wearing motion capture gloves were rapidly tapping the air in mid-air. Through the transparent outer panel of the VR helmet, they could vaguely see dense lines of code projected in front of their eyes. With the high-frequency flashing of the chassis indicator light, these codes were scrolling rapidly, as fast as 16. The credits are the same for movies played at double speed. A middle-aged man in a suit was walking around with an anxious look on his face. He wanted to say something several times, but he swallowed the words that reached his throat back into his stomach. Just when the middle-aged man was about to turn around and get a glass of water, several young people wearing VR helmets let out a sigh in unison. If you get close to their helmets at this time, you can find that the rapidly scrolling codes have stopped one after another, as if the invisible rotating shaft is stuck by something. What's wrong? The middle-aged man didn't care about pouring water, and quickly walked behind a few people and asked. We seem to have been caught," one of the young men wearing a helmet said. "This is impossible, our IP address keeps changing." "How did he catch us?" "Caught? You mean you were discovered?" The middle-aged man suddenly widened his eyes. "Who is the other party? Is it an official white hat?" "No. No," the young man who spoke earlier shook his head. "It's not like the official people. If it were them, we should have received a warning notice by now. This guy is just like us, he's also black," another young man said. From the sound of his voice, he should be a woman, but he had a washboard figure that was almost as flat as the front and the back, plus a helmet that covered the entire head, making her look completely no different from the man sitting next to her. "He is launching an attack on us, using such a primitive attack method." The hacker who was the first to say this was stunned, and then suddenly jumped up from the ground. "This is impossible. Where did he come from? So many attack resources. How many broilers has he hijacked? What's going on? What's going on?" The middle-aged man also became nervous. "Have your identities been exposed? Is it no longer safe here? Our physical IP should not be exposed yet, but we can't continue the intrusion." "What do you mean? You are all top hackers, but if you join forces, You still can't defeat one of your opponents, the middle-aged man said angrily. Isn't it because the price we offered is not generous enough? No, Mr. Morgan, you misunderstood me. The hacker shook his head and took off his helmet. The other party used the most primitive DDoS attack. This attack method has nothing to do with technology. It is just a competition. The total amount of network resources in the hands of both parties, although I don't know where the other party has transferred so many resources. Before he finished speaking, the middle-aged man interrupted him. DDoS attack. It's the kind of attack that relies on a large number of useless data packets to block our server, right? Then can't you just turn on the firewall? It's not that simple, the young hacker could only explain to him with a wry smile. Facing the layman who knew little about the attack process, our best response now is to unplug the network cable and take all servers offline. If you want to continue to invade the Anaheim server, we must withstand the other party's attacks. The firewall can block most attacks, but it will also block the data we transfer back. How much is left on the Anaheim server? The middle-aged man pondered for half a second and then asked. There are still nearly 1/3 of the evidence that needs to be destroyed, and a full half of the data that needs to be relocated, the hacker replied. Don't worry about that information for now. Delete all documents such as bills and make them as clean as possible. Now that the funder's father had spoken, the young hacker had no choice but to put on the VR helmet again, but before he could sit down, several people in the room asked about the peculiar sting that occurs when plastic is burnt. Nasal smell. What's the smell? The middle-aged man's nose twitched twice. Did something burn? Have any of you been to the kitchen? But he realized in a second, there was no kitchen in this temporarily rented house. Including himself, several people still relied on lunch boxes for lunch, and paper lunch boxes were piled in the room. Inside the corner. Server, the female hacker suddenly screamed, the server is overloaded. It's overheated. What did you say? The middle-aged man rushed to the next room and opened the door. Suddenly, a choking smell of smoke hit his face, almost knocking him out of breath. The other two hackers also rushed to the door of the room. They pushed aside the smoke and looked inside. This small room of less than 20 square meters is filled with modular shelves. Each layer of the shelves is filled with expensive servers. Hundreds of cables are bundled together, as if they are tied together. Several of them occupy all the space on the ground. At this moment, several servers with poor heat dissipation positions were constantly emitting black smoke, and green-yellow flames were rapidly spreading along the rubber outside the cables. This. The middle-aged man rubbed his eyes that were blurred by the smoke. Only then could he see the situation in the room clearly. He felt like he had fallen into an ice cave and couldn't help but shiver. You know, the valuable technical information copied from the Anaheim database can now be stored in these dozens of servers. And these servers are now burning. Do you have a backup of those data? He looked at the hacker beside him and asked with trembling lips. No, the other party shook his head. There is no backup, it's too late at all, and the storage device is not enough. Then why are you still standing there? Hurry up and rescue the server, the middle-aged man shouted hysterically. He turned around, looked around, and his eyes immediately locked on the kettle beside him. There was also a kettle next to it that he had not had time to pour. Glass of water. Get out of the way. The middle-aged man pushed away a hacker behind him, rushed to the table in 3 steps, grabbed the kettle, and rushed to the room where the server was placed. Wait. Mr. Morgan. You can't use water. The young hacker took a look and quickly hugged the middle-aged man's waist. There are all wires in here. If you put this pot of water in, everything will be short-circuited. Now there are only a few. A server is on fire, and most of the servers are not damaged, but once there is a short circuit, there will really be nothing left. Then we should move out the undamaged servers, the middle-aged man holding the kettle said urgently. Except for the young hacker who stared at the smoke and rushed in at the beginning, the other people actually stood there, staring at the middle-aged man with indifferent eyes, as if they were telling him, "You just paid money for work, fire in the computer room is none of our business, why should we risk electric shock to help you rescue it?" This is indeed the case. Except for the young hacker who has been talking to the middle-aged man, who is the Morgan Consortium's own technical consultant, these other hackers are all temporarily recruited mercenaries. These people clearly mark their prices and take money to do things. If it is a dirty job, an extra large amount of hush money will be charged. "Why are you standing still?" The middle-aged man slammed the lid of the kettle on the ground, panting and glaring at the people. The contract does not specify how to deal with this situation. According to industry regulations, we are not responsible for such emergencies. By default, the female hacker took out a piece of bubble gum from the pocket of her sweater, peeled off the wrapper and threw it into her mouth. He said, "You can ask us to help you, but you have to pay more." "You," the middle-aged man gritted his teeth. He wanted to threaten these hackers with words, but he also knew very well that these people were all veterans who had been on the road for many years, and similar jobs were not allowed. This is the first time they have taken the call. They are not afraid of threats such as silencing. If the Morgan Consortium dares to take advantage of others after the incident, these shady things will soon be made public in various ways. "Okay, you need to add money, right? How much?" "You make a price, hurry up." The middle-aged man suppressed his anger and took out a card holder from the inner pocket of his suit, which was full of large denominations. "Bearer credit point stored value card." Greed flashed in the eyes of several hackers. The young girl stuck out her tongue, licked her lips, and said, 50,000, no, 1 million. "Are you trying to take advantage of the situation?" the middle-aged man said angrily. "This million is not the total price, but refers to 1 million per person. I don't know if we are taking advantage of the fire, but I know that if you delay it any longer, the fire inside will become bigger and bigger. Here you go." The middle-aged man took out a few black and gold stored value cards and slapped them on the table. "I changed my mind again, 2 million." The girl stretched out her hand and covered the cards. "Don't push yourself too far." The middle-aged man's face suddenly darkened, and the girl raised her eyebrows. She suddenly felt that the commonly used metaphor in novels as gloomy as dripping water did not seem to be an exaggeration, because now their sponsor's face is really dripping. Sweat and smoke tears mixed together and slid down the curve of his cheek to his chin. The middle-aged man's upper body muscles tightened, as if he would pounce at any time. "Don't be nervous, I'm just joking, after all, we are very trustworthy." The girl laughed dryly, took the stack of stored value cards, and gave them to her companions. "Then go to work quickly." The middle-aged man said one word at a time. "By the way, Mr. Morgan, are we going to continue attacking Anaheim later?" another hacker suddenly asked. "What an attack? First grab all the servers, and then find a way to recover the lost data. Remember, if I die, you won't even have a chance to live," the middle-aged man said through gritted teeth. "It is very clear that if the technical information stolen from Anaheim is destroyed because of this incident, then the rest of his life will definitely be ruined. In this case, he will risk the incident being exposed. Even if it's a risk, he has to drag these bastards to be buried with him." Mr. Morgan, there seems to be something shining in your pocket," the hacker said again. "What?" The middle-aged man known as Mr. Morgan was slightly startled. "What are you talking about?" "Your phone seems to be lighting up." "This is impossible. To be on the safe side, I turned off my phone before entering this room." As he spoke, he lowered his head, but when he saw the white fluorescence coming out of the slit in his pocket, his whole body was filled with excitement. But he was stunned for a moment. There are only two things in his pocket, the key card of the hovercar and his mobile phone, and the former cannot shine at all. The middle-aged man quickly took out his mobile phone. His mobile phone was turned on at some point, and the recording function was automatically activated. Judging from the time displayed on the screen, The recording had been recorded for almost a month. 10 minutes ago. In other words, the recording had already started before they were attacked by DDoS. In other words, all the conversations he had with these hackers just now were recorded. Not only that, there is another running program in the taskbar of the phone that he has never seen before. Although he does not know much about computer technology, the simple and easy to understand UI of this running program can still be understood. Every second of recording on the phone, an audio file will be automatically generated and then sent to the outside world. As for who it is sent to, it no longer matters. It's over. The middle-aged man's heart skipped a beat, his feet softened, and he sat down on the ground. P.S. Thanks to Zhang Siyu for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 546. Although the hackers are young, they are all mature. They just looked at each other and made a decision in their hearts. The girl took out a bottle of wolf spray directly from her pocket, sprayed it wildly on the face of the middle-aged man who was in a state of despair, then kicked him over, and swiftly removed the bulging penis from his body. The card holder was searched out, and the other young hackers divided into two groups. The man who was closer to the computer room dragged all the furniture that could be dragged to the door of the computer room, blocking the technical consultant of the Morgan Consortium inside. The other people rushed to the door. The middle-aged man who passed by fell to the ground, and someone on the way kicked him. Anyway, this guy is finished, and there is no chance to retaliate against them. As long as they can avoid official pursuit and lurk in those mixed slums for a period of time, the money they get from the Morgan Consortium will be enough to make them suffer. This storm has passed. As for official wanted notices, these top hackers never take them seriously. At least half of them are hackers who have had their accounts cancelled. However, those on Arc require real name information to use them. Various equipment, but never brought any obstacles to them. As long as they want, they can become another person at any time. Each of them has at least 20 or more alternate identities like this prepared in their hands. There was one thing they did not tell the truth to Mr. Morgan, although they claimed that they were never afraid of being cheated by their employers. In fact, cheating was a common occurrence in this line of work. After working hard on typing code for a week, I was so exhausted that I was on the verge of sudden death. The income I could earn might not be as much as a fraction of what I could earn from a black and white crime. You bastards, damn you. The middle-aged man lay on the ground, covering his burning eyes with one hand, and waving forward randomly with the other hand, trying to catch the girl who sprayed pepper spray into his eyes. However, the latter dodged his hand very quickly, and instead raised a kick and kicked him on the chin. The middle-aged man only felt a strong sense of dizziness coming from the depths of his brain. In a daze, he seemed to hear the other party laughing and saying, "Idiot, hacking is just our side job." The girl didn't say the remaining half of the sentence, but anyone in this field would only know what the remaining half of the sentence was. Hackers are just their side job. They are not weak technicians, but liars, thieves, and robbers. It's not a problem to be a robber when necessary. "Myra, it's time to go," shouted a hacker with dreadlocks, a yellow-green jersey, and a pair of Japanese clogs. "We have to get to the station quickly. The person who picks us up is not here. It will take too long." "Wait a minute, this guy has a lot of valuable things," the girl called. Myra grabbed the agate brooch from the middle-aged man's collar and stuffed it into his pocket, and then turned his attention to the middle-aged man. "On top of men's belts. She can be sure that the texture of this belt is definitely genuine leather. As for the golden belt buckle, even if it is not 24K pure gold, at least the weight is there. If you take it off and buy it purely as precious metal, it is probably worth hundreds of thousands. Credit points. Damn it, I can't open this button." Myra tugged hard on the heavy belt buckle. She had given up on taking the entire belt away. "Do you have a knife? Maybe I can buckle this belt to cut it off." "Don't worry about that damn belt buckle," shouted the dreadlocked hacker, I'm afraid the people from the Morgan Consortium are already on the way. If you don't want to be caught by them and used as a scapegoat, come here quickly." While he was talking, he had already taken out a keycard that he had prepared long ago and opened the locked door. But just as the door opened, a rectangular hard object was pushed in from the outside, knocking him to the ground with a thud, followed immediately by the sound of dense footsteps. Several security bureau agents wearing dark gray uniforms poured into the room. They held half-person high transparent riot shields in one hand and a taser gun in the other, aiming at Myra and others. "Everyone, squat on the ground. Hold your head with your hands," the agent who was the first to rush into the room and knock down the dreadlocked hacker shouted loudly. "We have obtained the authority to kill. If you resist, we have the right to take action. Deadly means." After saying that, he added, "As long as we deem it an act of resistance, we will shoot without hesitation." Several hackers looked at each other and squatted down one after another. The only exit from this room was this door. Other than that, all the windows were welded shut with steel bars, including the second floor. They have nowhere to escape. Cuff the person and the one lying on the ground. Seeing that the target had no intention of resisting, the agent leader relaxed slightly and said to his colleagues. But at this moment, the dreadlocked hacker who was lying at his feet and moaning in pain suddenly jumped up like a normal person, grabbed the edge of the riot shield with both hands, and overturned the unprepared agent team leader with his shield. On the ground. What this guy looked like just now was just an act. The agent leader reacted immediately, but his body had lost balance. At this critical moment, he simply let go of the shield in his hand, reached forward with both hands, and grabbed the opponent's clothes tightly. Collar. Bang. The two fell to the ground together. In comparison, the agent leader who was cushioned below fell much harder than the hacker who suddenly burst out. Fortunately, he still wore a protective helmet on his head. Otherwise, just by hitting the ground with the back of his head, he would have suffered a severe concussion at least. In addition to computer network technology, the dreadlocked hacker is obviously also proficient in free fighting. After falling to the ground, he used his elbows to slam the agent team leader's ribs. In pain, the agent team leader had to loosen his grip. The hands on the opponent's collar were protecting his own front. But the expected third punch did not fall. The dreadlocked hacker directly put his hand on the agent leader's chest, got up from him, and rushed towards the door that was just around the corner. There was an armored vehicle of the security bureau parked outside the door. No one was left in the vehicle. Even the keycard had not been removed. He could even hear the low roar of the unquenched engine. As long as he can get into the car, he can escape from the security bureau's pursuit. Unfortunately, he will never have the chance to get those stored value cards in Myra's hand. Damn it, it's all this money-grubbing bitch's fault. If she hadn't wasted those 10 seconds, maybe they would have gotten rid of these gray-skinned dogs long ago. Just as the dreadlocked hacker stepped out of the door, a security agent behind him holding a taser had already pulled the trigger, and two darts with special wires trailing from their butts were shot out from the muzzle. It was hooked on his yellow-green jersey. Suddenly, a strong high-voltage current rushed into his body. His body twitched violently several times, and then he fell straight on his back. But in less than a second, the hacker struggled to get up from the ground. His face was covered with saliva and tears, and his face was extremely distorted. He roared, ripped off the hook on his clothes, discharged the electric dart, and limped. He turned but jumped towards the armored vehicle very quickly. "This guy is an enhanced person," the agent holding the taser gun said. "No matter how strong an ordinary human being is, he will never be able to regain his mobility immediately after being shot by a taser gun. He can only enhanced people who have undergone body modification have this kind of extraordinary physical fitness." The physique of this dreadlocked hacker looked very lean, but no one expected that he would be a hidden enhancer, and the level of enhancement seemed to be quite high. Even Myra and others had no idea about this. He wants to steal the car and escape, the agent yelled again. He hurriedly loaded the second bullet into the taser, but half of the dreadlocked agent's body had already gotten into the cab. Boom. Boom. A clear gunshot sounded. The agent leader got up from the ground at some point, took out his pistol, and shot the dreadlocked agent 3 times in the back. 2 shots to the chest and back, 1 shot to the back of the head, the standard Mozambique shooting method. Even if this dreadlocked hacker was a high-level enhanced person, even if the agent leader was only holding a 9mm pistol for self-defense, he was already dead the moment the bullet hit his brainstem. The dreadlocked agent's body froze on the spot for a moment, and then he fell on the driver's seat. This time, he could not get up again. The agent team leader turned around, pointed the still smoking gun at the other hackers, and said word by word, "Are there any enhanced people among you?" Fleet 0, New Dawn, in K. Ian's exclusive office. Oh. Everyone has been arrested, right? One person resisted arrest and was shot dead on the spot, right? Okay, I understand, thank you for your hard work. I'll leave the interrogation to everyone in the Security Bureau. Also, if possible, I hope that the content of the interrogation can be broadcast live to the public. Well, it doesn't matter if it's not convenient to make it public, anyway, the evidence in our hands is sufficient. Kaylan grabbed the microphone with one hand and leaned comfortably on the back of the thick leather chair. Go up, and said to the person on the other end of the phone with a smile, "Of course, it would be best if you can beat up the drowned dog, otherwise, I won't care about those hackers. Let the guy from the Morgan family do it a few more times. Jingba, after all, is a public figure, so his treatment should naturally be more generous. Okay, let's do this for now." Just as Kaylan hung up the phone, there was a sudden pop sound from the pressure valve of the airtight door, and the thick metal door panel slid to one side. A young woman wearing a white coat and dark skirt walked in from outside holding a stack of documents. She pushed up the mirror frame, her high heels making a clicking sound, and walked quickly to Ian's desk. This woman Kaylan is no stranger to Dr. Renee, a senior researcher at the Institute and the leader of the Agunakota research team. Although the information shows that Dr. Renee is 37 years old, from the appearance, she looks like a beautiful young woman in her early 30s who is in the golden age of mature women. When seeing this woman at the first glance, Kaylan, who had a poor vocabulary, instantly had these 7 words pop up in his mind. The skin on the bear's thighs is long and bulging. Not only him, but also the soldier standing guard outside the door couldn't help but turn around and look directly at Dr. Renee's back. Kaylan vaguely remembered that the old dog guy seemed to have said something like, "The skin drum is bigger than the shoulders." He couldn't remember the second half of the sentence. In short, it was a way to describe a woman's status as excellent. Statement. Coupled with the slender waist and the majestic mountain peaks that are so tall that one can't help but wonder whether the white coat can be buttoned, Kaylan has to admit that this Dr. Renee is, of all the women she had ever seen, she had the best figure, bar none. Even Sophia would be defeated in front of her. Is this the level of medical beauty technology within the Institute? Kaylan couldn't help but mutter in her heart. Dr. Renee, what can I do if you want to see me? Something's wrong. Dr. Renee pushed the frame on the bridge of her nose, leaning her upper body slightly forward, looking down at Kaylan condescendingly. Her net height was probably close to 1.8 meters. Coupled with the addition of high heels, Kaylan felt a sudden sense of oppression, especially in this position. The heavy weight seemed to be about to fall on the table. "I need you to have a child with me." Dr. Renee looked directly at Kaylan and said extremely seriously. "Kaylan, do you need me to repeat it again?" Dr. Renee came closer, and Kaylan could even smell her perfume. "Have a child with me, preferably through natural conception, not in vitro fertilization way." Apart from being serious, there was no other emotion in her words, and the expression on her face was extremely cold, as if what she just said was just a business-like sentence such as "sign these documents." What is going on? Before this, Kaylan had imagined many scenarios when people from the Institute would meet with him. Even if Dr. Renee suddenly took out a scalpel and wanted to dissect him, he would not be surprised. But the shocking request put forward by the female doctor in front of him still succeeded in causing Ian's brain to shut down briefly. Seeing that Kaylan didn't respond, Dr. Renee actually reached out and reached for his waist. Kaylan was so frightened that Kaylan immediately jumped up from the chair and took a few steps back quickly. Why? My team and I carefully inspected the console of Yagunactor. We made many attempts. Neither humans nor the containers of the corrosion seed could resonate with the console. Currently, the only one who can control it is you. Are the only person on this ancient battleship, Dr. Renee said in a business-like manner. You actually brought the container onto the battleship? I remember, this is not allowed by the regulations, right? Kaylan asked with narrowed eyes. I applied for special permission from the Undead Crew Association, and it has been approved. If you need to verify it, I can show you the relevant certification documents. Dr. Renee directly called out the name. Obviously, she was inside the Institute. Her status is much higher than Kaylan expected. Not only does she know about the existence of the Undead Crew, she can even proactively find the Undead Crew and obtain special permission. This is not something that ordinary senior researchers can do. According to my judgment, as the only controller of Yagunactor, you must have some special characteristics in your body. Dr. Renee stared at Ian's body closely and continued, but the Undead Crew will prohibit. The Institute is not allowed to conduct an autopsy on you, and is not even allowed to do research beyond the scope of a general physical examination. The only things I can get are your blood samples and routine physical examination reports, but I haven't found any valuable clues. Kaylan himself knows this. He and Yvonne have done several experiments. Although his body has super radiation resistance and self-healing ability, the body tissue stripped from his body does not have this property. Whether it is hair, blood, bone marrow, or anything else, or even a small piece of muscle tissue cut from the back of the hand, they are all the same as ordinary humans. This is Lei, who wants to do something with him as soon as he comes up. DRNI, of course, couldn't find any clues from those inspection reports. So I can only take this approach. Not only do I need your Mekingsio sample for more detailed research, but also, if I can get pregnant with your child, he can also become an excellent research subject. She continued. Madman. Every one of these people who came out of the Institute is a humming lunatic. Kaylan couldn't help but roared in his heart. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 547. What's wrong? Are you not interested in me? Seeing Kaylan moving his body as far back as possible, almost pressing against the back of the chair, Dr. Renee's eyes showed a trace of doubt. Do you like younger women? Of course, for the purpose of research, I can also find other women to mate with you on my behalf. You can tell me your preferences and requirements, and I will try my best to find a partner that satisfies you. She paused and then said, of course, in order to ensure that the research process does not deviate from the expected track, I need to monitor the entire process when you are engaging in reproductive behavior with the selected experimental samples. In addition, I refuse. Dr. Renee was cut off by Kaylan before she could finish her words. Do you know what you are talking about? You must be drunk or, on drugs, Lei. DRNI. If you are questioning my mental state, then I can assure you that I am in a very sober state. I rarely drink alcoholic beverages and have no symptoms of addiction to psychotropic drugs, of course. If you feel you need some alcohol to spice things up, I can find you the best alcoholic beverages on the Ark. No, what I mean is, don't you know that this kind of experiment violates human ethics? With the continuous development of science and technology, the contradiction between it and human ethics and morality has been deepening. Dr. Renee said calmly. 1,000 years ago, human society generally believed that gene editing technology and artificial womb technology and deparenting public breeding facilities are against human ethics and morals, but if we had not put these technologies into practical applications, humans might have become extinct in the interstellar drifting process. 100 years ago, she continued, human body modification technology and full-body cyborgization were not accepted by mainstream thinking. But without the modification technology, we would have provided the front line with a large number of modified warriors whose capabilities far exceeded those of ordinary soldiers. Then during the process of Ark landing on Alpha Planet, the number of soldiers who died from indigenous creatures will be more than 10 times as high as now. Kaylan and Dr. Renee looked at each other. He had to admit that the other party was right. When a race faces the fate of extinction, the so-called ethics and morals are just empty words. In a sense, these rigid thinking have become shackles that restrict the development of science and technology. However, if there were no such shackles, he tried to imagine such a society. It might be a social structure close to the bee colony model, where the meaning of each individual's survival is only for the continuation of the race. No one should have emotions, hobbies, entertainment, or any other meaningless things. The lowest worker bees don't even need to have the ability to think. The time of a day is accurately divided into eating, working, excreting and resting. Everyone performs their duties, and the whole society is orderly, just like a machine that operates precisely and almost never malfunctions. But if that really happens, people may not be called people anymore. They are just gears that keep rotating inside this machine. When these gears are worn and rusty, they will be just replaced by new gears produced. As a person living in a hive society, his life will also come to an end. Just imagining it, Kaylan felt indescribable depression, despair, and madness. Living in such a world, does living still have any meaning for the individual himself? Many social creatures on the earth adopt this social model, but when this social model is applied to intelligent humans, Kaylan suddenly feels how terrible this thing is. He forgot which book he had read such a sentence: death is actually not terrible. What is terrible is losing the meaning of living. Mr. Kaylan, you have been to the sick village before. I believe you should already know what the real purpose of the sick village is. Dr. Renee continued, to be honest, there is one more thing I can tell you. More than 60% of the funds of the biomedical department of the Institute are currently invested in the human cloning project. If progress goes well, within 50 years, clone soldiers will replace all natural persons in the army. Okay, stop talking. Kaylan stood up and said, please get out. Can I understand that this means rejection? Dr. Renee's tone still did not change much. Ken. Okay, I can take a step back. I just need your sample of me Kinks Yunyi. Absolutely impossible, Kaylan flatly refused. If you are really capable, you can use my blood samples to create clones. This is a good proposal, but unfortunately, I received news from the headquarters half an hour ago that this plan failed. Otherwise, I wouldn't come to you, Dr. Renee said. You actually had this plan? Failed? Why failed? Did the cloned me not have those special features at all? Kaylan couldn't help but narrowed his eyes. If the Institute really has the ability to clone humans at will ability, then he should be more careful. Who knows when someone around him will be replaced by a clone? He couldn't help but think of the strange pieces of meat he saw in the glacier ruins that could perfectly replicate the human form, but at least that thing would only appear in the ruins of Alpha civilization, and the headquarters of the Institute is in this ark. Superior. If there is any person or organization on the ark that Kaylan is not willing to be an enemy of, the undead crew will definitely be ranked first, and the second in the list is this Institute that has lunatics and psychopaths per capita. No, it cannot be cloned. Dr. Renee shook her head. We have tried at least 6,000 different human genes, and even some defective genes, but even these incomplete defective genes can at least be cloned. A formed human embryo is produced, but the cells cultivated with genes extracted from your blood have no ability to differentiate themselves at all. It will only continue to divide and proliferate like a malignant tumor, and finally becomes an irregular lump of flesh. The researchers tried to interrupt the supply of nutrients, and the huge tumor soon rotted and died. As Dr. Renee narrated, K. Ian's brows gradually furrowed. According to her description, the cells cloned from his own blood, aren't they cancer cells? Could it be that his body absorbed too much radiation, causing his genes to mutate? But if the gene has really mutated, then his body will definitely undergo extremely obvious changes now. No matter what, at least he still maintains his original appearance, instead of turning into a tumor that grows wildly. Not to mention tumors, K. Ian's body surface and body didn't even have the tissue proliferation that is common in radiation patients. In order to verify this, his body has been checked over by Yvonne. In Mazzy's original words, "For me, your body is more familiar than my girlfriend's body, even the location of the mole on your butt, I can be precise to within millimeters." As for the internal examination, in order to keep it confidential, they even purchased a whole family of medical examination equipment, including CR, CT, MRI, etc., on the grounds of for the health of the hunting group employees. Ever since I was born, Kaylan had never done such a detailed inspection, but despite this, he still found no abnormalities. If there was anything abnormal, it would probably be that as long as the needle was pulled out when drawing blood, the needle hole in the arm would heal very quickly. After digging out the bloody scab, which was not much bigger than sand, not even a trace would be left. It is precisely for this reason that I am more interested in your body. Dr. Renee looked at Kaylan and said. Kaylan always felt that the way she looked at him didn't look like she was looking at a person, but like she was looking at a very special and rare precious specimen. Wait a minute. Kaylan suddenly became excited. He realized that he seemed to have missed some important things. The reason why Dr. Renee and the Institute did not take coercive measures against this rare research subject was not because she was the person in charge of the S-019 ruins, but because the undead crew had issued a ban on them, not to mention tying oneself to the dissecting table. Even examinations and research beyond the scope of routine physical examinations are not allowed. From this point of view, the information they can collect may not be what Yvonne has in hand. Inside the Institute, I'm afraid there are many people who want to use a scalpel to cut off a piece of flesh from their bodies at the cost of several taser shots. He couldn't help but think of Tang Monk in the 4 famous novels Journey to the West, although 9 out of 10 goblins who wanted to eat Tang Monk's flesh were killed by the Golden Hoop. It's also thanks to the existence of this prohibition of the Undead Crew Association. Otherwise, with the style of the Institute, let alone the person in charge of the ruins, even if he is a member of the United Parliamentary Group, he probably won't be able to escape their clutches. Unless you become a formal member of the Undead Crew Club, this group of lunatics are probably thinking of their own ideas all the time. This time they used seduction. It is unknown what method they will use next time. But what makes Kaylan extremely puzzled is why the Undead Crew members banned the Institute from using them as research subjects. Why is that? The members of the Immortal Crew Club must have seen these reports from the Institute. No matter from which point of view, it is difficult for them to relate to the word normal people. Why would they give up such an excellent opportunity? What about opportunity? Is it just because he was chosen as the successor by Pope Chiron? No, this is simply impossible. Even Chiron himself will be expelled from the Undead Crew, let alone a reservist like himself. If he really has such great research value, Kaylan has no doubt that they will abolish him immediately. Instead, he sent himself to the Research Institute as a researcher. Secular ethics cannot restrain the lunatics of the Institute, and for the members of the Immortal Crew Club, it is even more empty talk. This can be seen from their support for the sick village, those sick miners. In fact, they are all specially selected experimental subjects. Not only are they unable to receive any treatment, they are also forced to endure greater pain. Kaylan even suspected that even the former member of the undead crew, the actual controller of the sick village, and the Pope Chiron, was one of these experimental subjects. Although the people of the undead crew are not as crazy as the Prophet, they are still willing to do anything for the survival of mankind. Kaylan couldn't help but feel chills starting to run down his spine. Why would they let themselves go? Are you planning to squeeze out all your use value first, and then attack yourself? That's not right. If this is the case, this information should be kept strictly confidential. Dr. Renee dares to tell herself these things, which shows that the undead crew has no intention of hiding it. Since everyone has made the matter clear, as long as Kaylan is not a disabled person with a defective IQ, so he should be aware of the problem. For some reason, Kaylan suddenly had a bold hypothesis in his heart. Could it be that the reason why the immortal crew would not allow people from the Institute to include them in the list of research subjects is because they have already understood the secrets about themselves? Because we knew those things from the beginning, the Institute's actions were completely unnecessary. Will he go to the undead crew now and tell them, I can read the language of Alpha civilization, I absorbed the crystal found in Leviathan, I have the ability to freeze time and space? They will only show a calm expression and tell themselves, we already know this. Maybe not all the secrets, but at least part of it, they definitely knew. In this way, everything seems to make sense. There is only one point of contradiction left, the prophet of the heretical sect. Judging from the treatment that Kaylan himself enjoyed, the undead crew seemed to be quite kind to special individuals like them. They neither sliced themselves up for study, nor forced 996 to interpret the documents of Alpha civilization. Not only did they not, he took any coercive measures and even gave himself great freedom and power. If this is the case, then why did the prophet betray the Ark? Is it because of his own reasons or something else? P.S. Thanks to book friend 2019062301131268 for the 5,000 starting coins, thanks to Kuko Krazo for the 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 548. Could it be that the reason why you refused so bluntly is because Dr. Renee's gaze that originally stayed on K-Ian's face gradually moved downwards? Your promotion system has pathological obstacles. Are you kidding me? Kaylan suddenly had the urge to give this woman a blow to crack her skull. I'm not kidding. According to the information I have, you have been engaged to Zofia Soma of the Soma family for several months. But Zofia Soma's latest medical examination report shows that she is still a virgin. So I have every reason to have doubts in this regard. Routine physical examinations don't include such items, right? Kaylan stared at the other party and asked in a deep voice. Of course not, Dr. Renee said. The undead crew will only prohibit us from conducting research on you, but Miss Zofia Soma's name is not included in this prohibition. What did you do to her? It's just a normal physical examination, except that a few gynecological examination items have been added. All operations are carried out in accordance with the rules and regulations. There is no arrogance in the entire examination process. Miss Soma herself has no understanding of the true purpose of the physical examination. Unaware, Dr. Renee replied. Haha. Kaylan sneered. I haven't touched her, so your examination is almost the same as a regular physical examination. If I had had sex with her, things might not be that simple, right? Hypothetically, if she was pregnant with my child, you would probably just cut open her belly and take away the embryo, right? Even among the many preparation plans, this is the last resort that is least likely to be used, Dr. Renee said. As long as Miss Soma is willing to cooperate, she will not be harmed in any way. Do you think I will believe you? Since you have not had a relationship with Miss Soma, the above assumptions are completely untrue. Dr. Renee shook her head. In addition to dysfunction, We have a second guess. Second guess? What do you mean? Kaylan looked at her with a half smile and asked patiently. You may have developed reproductive isolation from ordinary humans. In order to prevent the secret from being exposed, you have never had a relationship with Miss Soma. Kaylan felt that if he had a glass of water or coffee on the table now, he would definitely throw it on this beautiful female doctor's face without hesitation. Are you done? I'll ask you to get out after you're done. Otherwise, I will ask the guards to take coercive measures. Kaylan adjusted his emotions and said coldly to Dr. Rene, that young man just turned around. He glanced at you several times, and I think he will be very happy to carry out this order. Kaylan paused, lowered his voice slightly and said, I can't guarantee whether he will accidentally offend the doctor when executing the order. If you change your mind, you can come to me at any time. Dr. Rene gave Kaylan a deep look, and after leaving such a classic line, she turned and walked out of the office. Viewed from the back, Dr. Rene's buttocks are perfect, and her legs wrapped in black stockings are straight and slender. The lace stockings tightly tighten the plump leg flesh, and are perfect. Ian's XP system, however, at this moment, Kaylan has no thoughts about this woman at all. He even hopes that this woman will disappear from this world quickly and never appear again. Thinking of this, Kaylan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was not the kind of person who lost his mind after a gold bug got into his head. If something had really happened between him and Zofia, I'm afraid Zofia would be in danger at this time. Among them. Although the Immortal Crew Association can protect itself, its companions and friends are not included in this right now. This time the Institute can modify Zofia's physical examination items at will. Next time, if it is not guaranteed, it will use other people as bargaining chips to threaten itself. What Kaylan had been worrying about finally happened. With his current ability, unless he controls Yagunactor to crash into the Institute's headquarters, he will never be able to compete with the Institute. The only way to protect the people around him is to use immortality. The power of the crew. Or, simply make yourself a member of the undead crew. The people of the Immortal Crew Association have no less secrets than themselves, but the madmen at the Institute never dare to take any chances with them. The Immortal Crew probably all know what the Institute is doing, but I still have to protest to them, or at least let them express their opinions. Kaylan thought to himself, no one can be sure. In sexual seduction after failure, what measures will the Institute take to force itself to submit? You must know that he is now a reserve member of the Immortal Crew Association. If he is randomly manipulated by a group of lunatics in white coats, he will lose the face of the Immortal Crew Association. Although he is not sure, this group of people in the Immortal Crew Association, do you really care about face? He took out his mobile phone and planned to call Demeter to complain, but as soon as he turned on the screen, Yayan's email was sent. Although the official account of the Ya family group was used, the tone between the lines clearly revealed that this email was written by the fat man. In addition to a copy-pasted notice of the finals rematch, there were more than 1,000 words written densely underneath. There is a detailed explanation of the characters' competition system, as well as a lot of pictures, videos, and modeling files stuffed in the attachments. Only then did Kaylan remember that the rematch day for the Mecha competition finals, which had been suspended due to trouble between Man and the Raven Club, was already very close at hand. In addition to Kaylan, other clubs and teams that qualified for the finals also received notification emails from the Ya group. The rematch format that had been kept secret was finally made public today. The final rematch will be held on the virtual battle platform. When Kaylan saw such a line of words, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Virtual battle platform. Is this the plan to use a mecha battle game to decide the winner? Isn't this a bit too hasty? Could it be that the Ya group's budget is insufficient, so they have to make concessions? After all, the resources required to rebuild a finals venue are really not a small amount. But when Kaylan continued to read, he realized that he had thought wrong. The cost of this virtual battle platform was no less than building a real finals venue. The YIP Foundation teamed up with the military and research institutes to develop a brand new simulated battlefield training system, and this final rematch was the first time this training system was unveiled to the public. Unlike previous virtual training programs that are closer to games, this training system uses a thinking immersive access terminal, just like Ian's Blasphemer Mecha in a bottomless sinkhole. Like Trial, people who connect to this training system will be completely immersed in a virtual world. This kind of scene that has appeared in many science fiction works has finally been put into practical application. From the 20th to the 21st century in the old era, a large number of characters with this theme appeared on the screen. Kaylan alone has watched 10 movies such as The Matrix, Ready Player One, and Sword Art Online. Several movies. At that time, people thought that after AR and VR, human consciousness would soon be fully connected to the virtual world. But after a series of painful lessons, people gradually realized that complete immersion in the true sense is completely different from AR and VR, which rely solely on external devices to achieve virtual reality effects. The human brain was too sophisticated. Among the first batch of people to participate in the immersion experiment, only 3 people successfully woke up, but even so, their brains were irreversibly damaged. To this day, the brain is still a restricted area in human body modification surgery. Although many modified people have installed brain-computer interfaces, this brain-computer interface cannot connect human consciousness to the virtual world. It is just a comparison. It's just a complicated control switch. The so-called brain-computer interface relies on capturing the special neural current signals emitted by the brain to control the devices or instruments connected to it. However, complete immersion technology is exactly the opposite. It not only needs to accept the brain's feedback signal, and more importantly, what is written in the computer program, is input into the human brain. While blocking the real senses, it allows the person to see things in the virtual world and hear the virtual world. The sounds, the smell of the virtual world. If it were just pictures, sounds and smells, the difficulty would not be outrageous, but when various factors in reality are added together, the information flow would be very terrifying. If the output is not controlled well, it would be easy to be like Sword Art Online. It's the same as described in It directly burns the user's brain. Kaylan knew that the Institute had been making attempts in this area, but he did not expect that this thing would be brought to the forefront in such a way. I just don't know how safe this virtual battle platform is, but considering that this is an important game with a viewing rate of more than 70%, if there are security risks in this thing, the family group should not agree to use it. Way to complete the rematch. It would be great fun if a contestant's brain was burned by the machine during the live broadcast of the game. Kaylan continued reading. In addition to the officially announced device parameters and functions, Yan also attached his own feelings to the email. As early as when these devices were first delivered to the corporation, this fat man who was not afraid of death had already volunteered to experience them. Brother Kaylan, I have to tell you one thing, this thing is really humming deadly, Yan wrote in the email. Although I am afraid of pain, my sensory sensitivity is only adjusted to 15%, but the moment I was hit by the bullet, I almost went into shock from the pain. As if he was afraid that Kaylan wouldn't believe it, Yan also attached a video taken from the first-person perspective. After a huge gunshot, his perspective suddenly shook greatly, and then it seemed like the machine was stuck. He paused, and it took several seconds to recover. There is no health bar in this virtual world, but when a bullet hits a body part, the impact of the bullet will be calculated comprehensively based on various factors such as bullet speed, bullet diameter and kinetic energy, incident angle, and the location of the bullet, and will be fed back to the user's health bar. Body. The person who was shot will not only feel great pain, but also have corresponding restrictions on physical movement. If the wound is not treated in time, various conditions such as blood loss, ulceration, and infection will occur, until the character dies. According to the propaganda content of the Yip Foundation, this calculation can even be accurate to every muscle and blood vessel. The characters in the virtual world are almost indistinguishable from real people. In this way, the situation in the game of being hit with only 1 HP left, but still jumping around, and finally relying on movement and operation to counter-attack and escape will never happen. Brother Kaylan, there is one thing I must emphasize again. During official competitions, the sensitivity is turned to 100%, moreover, in virtual battles, contestants are allowed to kill their opponents. P.S. Thanks to Hawkhand for the 5,000 starting coins, thanks to the useful soap and reading giraffe for the 1,500 starting coins, thanks to the rabbit who only loves small money for the 500 starting coins. P.P.S. I would like to ask everyone for some advice. Starting from about 3 or 4 months ago, every night around 8 p.m., a very strong and pungent smell of burning garbage and burning plastic would come from near my house. If you forget to close the windows in the evening, the whole house will be filled with this smell at night. If you take a few breaths, you will feel headache and nausea. I have responded to both the property management company and the community, and all the information has been lost. If I ask again, they will blame each other. Other property owners in the community, including my father, are not willing to join forces to investigate the source of the matter. They are all afraid of trouble and think that someone will deal with it and it will be fine after a while. But it's been almost half a year now, and I still often have the smell at night, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. The smell is the strongest tonight. I smelled it when I was typing in front of the computer. I quickly went to close the window, and when I walked to the window, I was almost knocked over by the smoke. The intensity was as if there was a fire downstairs in my house. The wind blowing from outside was full of pungent plastic smell, and I couldn't breathe at all. I really wanted to call the mayor's hotline or the Environmental Protection Bureau to report it, but I checked the reporting process and found that there must be at least one person to report to, but I have no idea where the source of the smell is, and it always appears at night, in the dark. I don't know where the smell is coming from. Such a report will probably have no effect. What is certain is that this kind of odor has a really great impact on the body. Healthy people will probably be poisoned and sick if they smell it, let alone people like me who are already sick. What should you do if you encounter this situation? Book friends, do you have similar experiences? Can you help me think of some practical solutions? If I continue to be smoked like this, I feel like I really can't stand it anymore. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 549. If you are killed instantly, it will only be a moment of pain at most, but I am afraid that the kind of person who is seriously injured and still breathing is unable to die, and his mental state is still awake. Just the illusion makes my heart tremble. If you have a bad heart, it's because you are overweight. Kaylan complained in his heart that even if this kind of virtual world immersion device can 100% restore real feelings, the protection mechanism of the human brain can still take effect. If you really suffer when the pain is unbearable, this protection mechanism will automatically take effect. First, a sufficient amount of endorphin is secreted, which is a biochemically synthesized hormone similar to morphine. It can bind to morphine receptors and produce an analgesic effect. It is a painkiller produced by the human body. If the situation is so serious that even endorphins cannot solve the problem, the brain will directly choose to unplug the network cable, which is commonly known as protective syncope. When this situation is reflected in the virtual world, it is almost as if the game character has been disconnected. Same. In any case, at least the user's body will not be harmed in the real world. Compared with fighting with real swords and guns, the safety of this completely immersive system is still much stronger. At least there won't be vicious incidents like man's attempt to take advantage of loopholes in the game to kill people. Even if someone wants to torture the opponent, the tortured party can disconnect by voluntarily abstaining, but in reality, giving up resistance will only make you die faster. I just don't know how realistic this device is. Kaylan is certain that the operating costs of this platform must be extremely high at this stage. It is not cost-effective to use it to train ordinary soldiers, but if it is used to train elite pilots, special forces or battleship pilots, etc., then the deal will definitely make a profit. After all, a piece of data and a genuine ship of the warships, it is easy to see which one has the higher actual value. With the subsequent development of the virtual immersion system, this thing can even be used for battle deductions. With the computing power of ARC's core mastermind, it should be more than enough to process the data flow of several fleets and hundreds of thousands of ground troops. Alas, no matter what I say, you can only know that feeling if you have experienced it personally, so I used all the connections and resources at my disposal to help you get an immersion cabin in advance. When you receive this email, the things should be almost delivered to Fleet Zero. Seeing this sentence, Kaylan couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. This fat man was taking credit for himself again. Without the acquiescence of the family group, with his resources, it might not be possible to give him 2 prototype skeletons. Problem, but this kind of immersion chamber involving core secrets is absolutely impossible to be taken out of the competition venue, let alone given to others in a private name. This immersion cabin was probably sent to me by the family group to express its goodwill to me. After all, the 2 parties are now in the honeymoon period of cooperation. I just gave them such a big gift. Family naturally, nor can one fail to understand the principle of reciprocity. Kaylan finished reading the instructions attached to the email in 3 clicks, and just at this time, the phone on his desk rang. Mr. Kaylan, there is a piece of supplies sent by ARC that you need to sign for in person. The sender is Yayan from the family group. New Dawn, Medical Room Number 1. Although Yayan repeatedly assured in the email that there was absolutely no problem with the safety of the immersion chamber, Kaylan still chose the medical room for the test just to be on the safe side. If he is very lucky and something unexpected happens, it will be more convenient to rescue him here. It's never wrong to prepare for the worst in everything. The immersion chamber is installed in a standard cargo container, although the main body of the immersion chamber is just a metal coffin more than 3 meters long. The attached terminal server is enough to convert the originally empty number 1 medical. The room was packed to the brim. This big guy couldn't help but remind Kaylan of the first electronic computer in human history, the ENIAC, which weighed more than 30 tons and covered an area of 170 square meters. The volume and weight of this immersion chamber's accessory equipment are even greater than those of the ENIAC. The internal structure of the immersion chamber is divided into 2 sections. A baffle with a silicone seal separates the user's head and body. In order to reduce brain damage as much as possible, the user's head must be completely immersed in the LCL, in the life-sustaining liquid. The effect of this thing is equivalent to a miniature medical cabin. As for why not soak the entire body in it, firstly, it is not necessary, and secondly, it is to save costs. High-quality LCL liquid is a luxury product that is as valuable as gold. Otherwise, let me do the test. Cheng Dong, the leader of the Security Bureau's special agent team, looked at the metal coffin in front of him, and then at Kaylan, who had put on a special immersion suit, and couldn't help but say. His main task when he was sent to Fleet Zero was to protect K-Ian's safety. If something happened to this important person, he would probably not have to continue working as the team leader. It's okay. This thing is not a test model. When the competition officially starts, the immersion chamber used by the contestants will be exactly the same as the one in front of us, Kaylan said, and then pulled up the hood of the immersion suit. This kind of special immersion suit is a bit like the tights worn by acrobatic performers. K-Ian's fingers, feet, and head are all tightly wrapped in thin gelatin fabric. As long as his face is exposed, his skin could even clearly feel the extremely thin metal wires embedded in the fabric. When Kaylan lay in the immersion chamber and the baffle on his neck fell, he suddenly felt a bit like King Louis XVI of France, who was sent to the guillotine. The only difference is that Louis XVI was face down when he was beheaded, while he was face up. The sealing rubber ring of the baffle fits closely with the groove reserved on the shoulder and neck of the immersion suit. The assisting staff first connected the cardiopulmonary monitoring equipment to the interface on the immersion suit, and then connected nearly 100 pieces of various sizes. One electrode pad was placed on Ian's head one after another. Prepare for a connection test. The guy who arrived at Fleet Zero with the immersion cabin and had a work badge from the Consortium Research Institute said in a deep voice, "When the equipment is connected, you will feel a current flowing along you. The brain and spinal cord flow to the limbs. This current will not make you feel pain. At most, it will just be a burst of numbness, but people who are connected for the first time will definitely feel a little uncomfortable. In addition, if there is anything beyond the tolerance range, if you feel any discomfort, just press this button and the connection will be disconnected immediately." As he spoke, he put a wired remote control into Ian's hand. The light yellow LCL liquid has been gradually poured into the head tank. Lan did not speak, but stretched out his other hand and gave a thumbs up. Connection activated. The staff member stared at the control background of the terminal server and the screen of the vital sign monitoring device, and carefully turned the button. A row of red indicator lights on the immersion chamber turned into orange, representing test. At this moment, Lan clearly felt the current described by the other party. He didn't feel uncomfortable, but instead felt a sense of relief. It was like when he was peeing. As the urine in the bladder was emptied, he suddenly shivered and all the muscles in his body trembled. That feeling. From a certain point of view, the principles of both are the same. What is stimulated is the human cerebral cortex, but the stimulation source of the former is an external discharge electrode, while the latter is the human sympathetic nerve. The heartbeat and pulse increased briefly, but they have returned to normal values. Which is normal, Mr. Lan? Do you feel any discomfort? Lan raised a finger and shook it twice. If his whole body was immersed in a medical cabin filled with LCL liquid, Lan could speak normally when his lungs and trachea were filled with LCL liquid. However, the LCL in the immersion chamber is only used to protect the user's brain, so his breathing can only be maintained by the trachea inserted in his nose. Similarly, his mouth has also been covered by the plug that comes with the immersion suit. It's blocked. It's a bit obscene to say, and I don't know who the designer of this immersion suit is. The shape and structure of this plug used to seal are somewhat similar to a special toy called Kawankai Resemblance. If when the game is broadcast live, those players will have such a toy stuffed in their mouths, the picture will be enough to kill society just thinking about it. Lan didn't know if the organizers of the event would change the design of the stopper at that time. Anyway, he had already made up his mind to wear a breathing mask when the official competition started. Anyway, the size of the mask was just right. The closing edges of the immersion suit are almost the same and will not interfere with each other. If he really wanted to go on TV with a Talking King request, then he would rather abstain from voting directly. The test is completed and everything is normal. After staring at the dense data on the screen for a long time, the staff member finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Mr. Lan, the immersion mode can now be officially activated." Lan nodded slightly. "In 5 seconds, connect your consciousness to the data network, and the countdown will be 5, 4. Lan silently closed his eyes. 3, 2. He took a deep breath, and the inner wall of the plastic trachea was instantly covered with a thin layer of white mist. 1. A bit of white light suddenly lit up in the originally black field of vision, and a large number of brilliant colors were smudged out like an overturned paint can. Seeing this scene, Lan subconsciously said a somewhat silly sentence in his head. Lines. Lincoln is dead. Note 1. Those messy colors quickly converged, and the white light instantly covered the virtual space where Ian's consciousness was located. It was a sealed room with a length, width, and height of 10 meters, with ceilings, walls and floors. They are all covered with 1 meter square white tiles, and an old solid wood chair is placed quietly in the center of the room. Although the painting style of this chair is completely different from the entire room full of science fiction atmosphere, everything looks so real, even the unique texture of the wood on the chair and the signs of wear and tear left on the edges due to years of use are detailed. Is depicted. Kaylan reached out and touched the back of the chair. The two completely opposite touches of roughness and smoothness unique to solid wood perfectly fed back to his tactile nerves. He could even feel the body temperature on his palms. A process that is slowly transferred to the interior of wood through contact. He pinched it gently with his nails, and a slight dent appeared on the surface of the wood. The cracked paint fragments turned into powder and fell, revealing the light beige original color of the wood inside. Not to mention anything else, the realism of this chair is already impeccable. But for some reason, Kaylan always felt that this virtual space always gave him a vague sense of familiarity. He didn't feel like he was here for the first time. The last time he had a similar experience was in the cockpit of the Blasphemer Mecha. Could it be that the fully immersive system developed by the Institute uses the technology of Alpha civilization? Kaylan recalled that in the numerous ruins exploration records, nothing similar to the Blasphemer Mecha had been unearthed, and he didn't know where the technology mastered by those madmen came from. It was developed by the Research Institute itself, and Kaylan would never believe it. Originally, even the most basic consciousness immersion system could not be made well, but now the finished product is perfect as soon as it is released. Isn't this too ridiculous? This is like a child who hasn't even learned to walk yet and breaks the 100-meter record in the Olympics for the first time running. If you tell me, who will believe it? With the idea of giving it a try, Kaylan followed the instructions in the manual, used specific gestures to call out the operation interface, and opened the experience item list. The first item on the list is the Battle of Mogadishu. Ha, I'm familiar with this. A knowing smile appeared on Ian's face. The Battle of Mogadishu is a VR shooting game released 16 years ago. Its game process basically reproduces the classic war movie Black Hawk from the old era. The plot and scenes in the fall are more realistic than those FPS games controlled by mouse and keyboard. In order to give players a better experience, the publisher of the game even released a supporting version 17 game controllers with realistic gun proportions and shapes. P.S. Thanks to the never-ending machine gunner for the 5,000 starting coins. Thanks to book friend 20171126200654654652 for the 100 starting coins. PPS Note 1, Lincoln is dead comes from the drama Sword Art Online. The protagonist's line "Link start when his consciousness enters the virtual world" means connection starts. The Japanese English accent and the spoof empty ear, it became the dead end of Lincoln. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-sen. Chapter 550. Its purpose is to restore the real shooting feel as much as possible. However, if we compare the degree of realism, the combination of VR games and firearm handles cannot compare to this virtual world that allows people to completely immerse their consciousness in it. Kaylan tried to raise his arm and bent his hand. From his elbow, through the movement of the muscles under the skin, he could clearly feel the contraction of the muscles on one side and the relaxation of the muscles on the other side. The tendons at the end drove the bones to complete the entire movement. He cracked his palms again, and there was a crisp click sound at the joints, and a ray of paleness appeared in the tense palms. When the palms relaxed and the blood returned, they immediately returned to ruddy color. If you take a scalpel and cut Ian's chest open now, peeling away the muscles and bones, you can even see the vigorously beating heart and the lungs that are constantly rising and falling with breathing. The oxygen-filled blood is drawn along the two arteries. It is pumped throughout the body and then flows into the left and right atria along the pulmonary veins and the superior and inferior vena cava respectively. If a person's consciousness is connected to this virtual world without knowing it, he may regard all of this as real. Of course, the premise is that the heads-up displays that display vital signs and connection status must be turned them all off. This virtual world is far better than the zombie fighting game that Kaylan created using the Yagonactor console. Although that game was developed using the technology of Alpha Civilization, its essence is different from that of most other games on the market today. Most pseudo-immersive games are actually similar. The character modeling is actually a hollow shell. At most, some anti-penetration nested layers are added to the joints. As for calculating the hit effect, it depends entirely on when the bullet hits the limb. A series of data such as the shot location and the kinetic energy of the warhead are substituted into the formula, and then the results are fed back to the character itself. For example, if a character in this type of game is shot, the change that happens to the character is hit the left leg by a 5.56 NATO bullet with a flying speed of 650 meters per second. The leg armor will be used to target the character according to the location and angle of the shot. The impact of the ballistic trajectory was judged to be a penetrating injury, no fracture occurred, direct damage to the health value of XXXX, and a debuff was added to the character, blood loss of XXX units per second, movement speed decreased by XXX percentage points, aiming stability decreased by XXX percentage points. In this completely immersive virtual world, after being shot, the player can even see the minced meat from his wound turning outwards, and the red and hot liquid constantly pouring out from the broken blood vessels. The blood produces a large amount of foam. They must be rinsed with water or the like to find the broken blood vessels retracted into the muscles, and then clamp them with hemostatic forceps. If it is not a penetrating injury and the bullet remains in the body, the situation will be even more troublesome. People without battlefield first aid skills cannot even take out the bullet stuck in the bones and muscles. In this virtual world, injuries you can't just right-click on the bandages and first aid kits in your backpack to process and bandage them. In the final analysis, it comes down to two words: real and hardcore. I just don't know how the Battle of Mogadishu has been changed in this virtual world. Kaylan said to himself as he clicked on the secondary menu under the game icon. For the movie Black Hawk Down, the prototype of this game, there was a scene in which Kaylan was very impressed. A ranger was shot while trying to cover his teammates. His leg artery was interrupted, and the broken blood vessel became elastic due to it was shrunk deep into the muscles, and the medical soldier spent a lot of effort to pinch the blood vessel from the torn flesh and stop the bleeding. Although the injured ranger eventually succumbed to his injuries, without the timely treatment of medical soldiers, the number of American soldiers who died in this operation would have been far more than 19. As for the Somali armed militiamen standing in their opposing camp, as long as they are shot, they are basically declared dead, even if they are not hit in vital parts, even if the bullet does not take their lives at the first time. Due to the harsh conditions and lack of medical resources, the resulting blood loss, infection, and other complications are enough to take away the lives of these wounded in the months after the battle. In this world-famous conflict in the old era, no detailed statistics could be obtained on the number of direct casualties of the militia groups. There was only a general figure of more than 3,000 people, let alone the number of casualties suffered by the militia due to various complications after the war. The wounded and dead, only the people around them can know their final outcome. In a country with constant war, human life is often just a number. This has been the case since ancient times. Battle of Mogadishu, fully immersive version, loading. As the progress bar in mid-air gradually filled up, the white room where Kaylan was located gradually darkened, and a faint smell of gunpowder smoke gradually spread in the air. First, the character selection interface. Kaylan remembers that in this Battle of Mogadishu, there are two characters for players to choose from, one is Rangers and the other is Delta Force. The equipment and roles of the former, the attributes are slightly worse, but the combat tasks assigned to them are relatively simple. The equipment and character attributes of the latter are much stronger, but the responsibilities they need to bear are also more arduous, whether it is main tasks such as attacking fortresses or retreating, or side missions such as supporting a certain team, removing fire points, and searching for and rescuing the wounded will all be given to players. As long as one of the missions is not completed, the final score will be greatly reduced. Not only that, players who choose Delta Force will have to face several times as many enemies as Rangers, and they often need to go deep behind enemy lines alone to complete a lot of seemingly impossible tasks. Because of this, the Delta Force play route is also called Hell Mode by most players. As a senior game player, the speed passing mode represented by Rangers is no longer a challenge to Kaylan, and he has already cleared the Hell Mode of Delta Force no less than 10 times. For Kaylan, he remembered clearly what shortcuts there were in the ruins of the city to quickly travel between various mission points, and which rooms contained heavily armed enemies and which contained only unarmed civilians, although it was not as good as those who refreshed the records. A big boss, but he is still quite confident about clearing the level without any injuries. Of course, there is still a big gap between injuries in VR games and fully immersive games. In VR games, if he is accidentally shot, Kaylan only needs to open his backpack and use medical props or find a nearby medic to recover from his injuries. But in this completely immersive system, once you get shot, it might be better to start over. Not to mention whether the AI medic he found after enduring severe pain and dragging his injured body had the ability to operate on real humans. Even if he could treat the wound well, he would not be able to have full health bar like the game character. The land went into battle again. Why don't you choose a ranger to try the waters this time? As long as you don't randomly end up in high-risk combat positions like armored vehicle machine gunners, it shouldn't be a big problem to speed through without getting hurt. Just when Kaylan was thinking about it, 3 character cards appeared in front of him. Huh? What's going on? Why are there 3 optional characters? Kaylan was stunned for a moment and looked intently at the description text on the character card. There is nothing wrong with the first character card and the second character card. They are the Rangers and Delta Force in the VR version. The shields and triangle badges belonging to the 2 forces are exactly the same as in the previous game. But this third character card is something Kaylan has never seen before. This character card has no badge or unit number. The example character is a character wearing a tattered t-shirt, a greasy turban on his head, and an AX-74U submachine gun with the butt removed on his chest. A strong black man carrying an RPG rocket launcher. The explanation text below only has a simple line, Mogadishu Armed Militia. This. Kaylan originally thought that the difficulty of Delta Force was already hellish enough, but this new character card obviously raised the difficulty of this game to a whole new level. Although the armed militia in Mogadishu was the victor in the Black Hawk Down incident, as the victorious party, they paid 200 times the casualties of the US Army. In other words, it would take the lives of at least 200 armed militiamen to exchange for the life of one American soldier. In human history, only when armies using hot weapons slaughter enemies who are still in the stage of cold weapons will there is such a disparity in the casualty ratio. But whether it is the war between the armies of the great powers equipped with Maxim heavy machine guns and the Japanese samurai using samurai swords and spears, or the atrocities committed by the American army armed with modern weapons against the native Indians, the showdown between these hot and cold weapons, and it is rare that the casualty ratio exceeds 200. For the American soldiers participating in this operation, these militiamen may really be just a number. For some reason, Kaylan, who had already decided to choose the Rangers, suddenly hesitated. He paced back and forth in front of the 3 character cards for half a minute, and finally stopped in front of the third character card. As an old player who has passed the game more than a dozen times, the temptation of a new DLC is too great, even though Kaylan also knows in his heart that if he chooses this camp, he will probably not survive even a minute. But this is just a game after all. If he doesn't even have the courage to try, then he might as well just open the cheat device. If you die, die. Anyway, if you are not dead after being shot, just restart, choose the third character card, Mogadishu Armed Militia. As soon as he finished speaking, the scene around Kaylan suddenly changed. Although it was still very dark, the few rays of light coming from the cracks in the window told him that he had entered the game. Kaylan looked around. This should be an ordinary house in Mogadishu. On the table next to it was a dilapidated AK-47 and dozens of rounds of extremely poorly made 7.62mm bullets. A dark-skinned companion sitting in the corner, holding a booklet with a completely faded cover in his clasped hands, he was reciting something silently with his eyes closed. Kaylan still has a certain understanding of the background of the game. What this NPC is holding should be the Islamic holy book Quran. After all, Islam is the state religion of Somalia, with more than 95% of the country's everyone is Muslim. An early model RPD light machine gun was placed at his feet. Kaylan estimated that this firearm produced in the Soviet Union was probably over 40 years old. It was quiet outside, and the arrest operation originally planned by the US Army had not yet begun. The NPC companion finally finished his prayer. He turned his head and glanced at Kaylan silently without speaking. It was only then that Kaylan finally realized the source of the strangeness he had always felt after switching to this game scene. Even though he was wearing a set of clothes similar to those of the local residents, the characters haven't changed at all. A Chinese with black hair, black eyes, and yellow skin appears in the militia in Mogadishu. It is a strange thing to say, right? Fortunately, due to the settings of the game program, Ian's companions did not have any doubts about his skin color and race. Presumably, the American soldiers who were the enemies would also ignore this matter. A game is still a game, but in reality, it may become an international incident. Just when Kaylan was about to move to the window to take a look at the scene outside, a rustling sound came from the walkie-talkie placed on the table with the AK-47. The NPC companion immediately jumped up and grabbed the walkie-talkie. The sentries have observed American planes. There are also convoys. Many enemies. They are going to attack our city. Everyone, prepare to fight. As if to take care of the only player in the entire game, the voice from the walkie-talkie was automatically converted into Chinese, which made Kaylan, who was used to listening to prototype dubbing, feel a little uncomfortable. In the movie Shadow Falls, before the US troops arrived in Mogadishu, their whereabouts had been seen by children on guard at the edge of the city. Before they entered the streets, the entire city was militia groups have already taken action. In this regard, the game is quite faithful to the original work. Quick, quick, quick. Act quickly. The NPC companion hung the two drums tied with a rope around his neck, picked up the RPD machine gun and said to Kaylan. He also spoke Chinese, with smooth words and no accent. Where should we go? Kaylan picked up the AK-47 on the table, grabbed the bullet and stuffed it into his pocket. He discovered something depressing. This AK-47 only had one magazine, that is to say, if he emptied the bullets in the magazine during the battle, he would have to remove the magazine and push the loose bullets in his pocket one by one. No, I have to pick up a few more spare magazines when I get the chance, Kaylan said silently in his heart. P.S. Thank you for the 1,500 starting coins from Prosperous End Smokescreen. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 551. Go to the Imam, he will tell us who the enemy is, NPC teammate said. In the Dashi cult, the status of Imam is equivalent to the priest in Catholicism, but there are some differences from priest. Simply translated from the literal meaning, it is equivalent to teacher of scriptures. P.S. Because the name of that sect will be automatically blocked as an asterisk by Gideon, yesterday's chapter was blocked, so any mention of the sect in the following articles will be replaced by the ancient name Dashi. The Imam in the NPC's mouth is actually a small leader of the Hawaii militia organization, a subordinate of the warlord aided. Instead of imparting teachings, he spends more time teaching his militiamen how to operate weapons. Using religious beliefs to control subordinate armed personnel is a common method used by many countries with big food religions. Although the combat effectiveness of those fanatical believers is far inferior to that of soldiers who have undergone formal training, any normal person will inevitably feel a little frightened by their madness without fear of death. As the old saying goes, even those who are violent are afraid of losing their lives. In the original work of Black Hawk Down, this group of armed militiamen exchanged the corpses of thousands of their comrades for the so-called victory and defeated the tired and fearful American army. Driven out of Mogadishu like cattle, Kaylan couldn't help but think of heretical sects in reality. Fortunately, the heretical sect has only been established for more than 10 years, and their foundation is far inferior to that of the great food sect that already existed in the 7th century AD. Moreover, the heretical sect is more like a random fabrication by the prophet to satisfy his own desires. Tool is a tool full of self-destructive tendencies. Rather than a tool, it is more appropriate to say it is a consumable. But there is one thing that is enough to put the threat of heretical sects at the front of all religions that have appeared in human history. The God believed in by the Dashi cult is an idol made up by humans, but the heretical sect's God does exist. Even Kaylan himself had witnessed the miracle of that God with his own eyes. For ordinary people with weak wills, this kind of existence is enough to subvert their cognition and drive them into madness. When the initial madness gradually fades away, these people whose cognition has been reshaped will become extremely loyal to the heretical section believers. Kaylan glanced at his NPC companion holding a machine gun, and a similar fanatical look flashed in his eyes. The two pushed open the broken door and walked out quickly. At this time, Kaylan could already hear the sound of helicopter rotors coming from far outside the city. The originally bustling civilians on the street suddenly became a little commotion. Many people did not run back to their houses immediately, but he stretched his neck and looked around for something. In fact, many of these civilians are not civilians in the true sense. As long as they pick up a gun, they are armed militiamen and the enemies of American soldiers. And guns are everywhere in Mogadishu. Kaylan couldn't help but think of an original sentence in the movie, "They are fighting the entire city." They refers to the Rangers and Delta members trapped in Mogadishu. An old black man wearing a white linen robe and a scarf of the same color on his head stood across the street and waved to Kaylan. The moment Kaylan saw him, a line of text jumped out in front of his eyes: "Mission objective, go to the militia assembly point." The NPC companion had already pushed away the passers-by and ran over, and Kaylan quickly followed. Except for the fact that they all spoke Chinese, which made him feel a little magical, the scenes, lights and shadows, and NPC characters were all the same as those in the real world. When Kaylan squeezed through the crowd, he could even smell those odors emanating from the NPCs. The smell of sweat. Hurry up, come here." The old man in white robe pulled Kaylan and the two of them into a low adobe house. In the corner where the sun couldn't reach, there were more than a dozen people with natural camouflage. Uncle Hay was squatting in a dark corner, and they were holding a variety of firearms in their hands. The types, calibers, and origins of these firearms were simply diverse, but they all had one thing in common, that is, they were all very old. These people probably don't even know the standard posture for shoulder shooting, let alone the daily care and maintenance of firearms. A strong black man wearing a denim vest and a baseball cap was holding a handful of microflush and spat on the militiamen. "The damn Americans planned a raid. They want to capture AI Diddy," but Aidid had already received the news in advance and left there. He glanced at Kaylan and another militiaman who had just entered the room, and then said, "But Aidid's cotters are still at the Olympic Hotel. Your task is to protect them and bring them to a safe place." Hearing the words of this little leader, Kaylan couldn't help but feel a little thump in his heart. The first mission that his group of militiamen received turned out to be more difficult than he had imagined. The capture operation mentioned by the little boss is the Operation Aaron planned by the US Special Forces in the movie to arrest Aidid's senior staff. It belongs to the first half of the entire Black Hawk Down incident. At this stage, the Army basically encountered no decent resistance. Under the cover of the Rangers, the Delta members quickly broke into the Olympic Hotel, eliminated the militiamen defending the hotel, and escorted the target person into the motorcade. As a veteran of this game, Kaylan has naturally played this part of the story when using Delta characters and Ranger characters. Compared with the entire game process, this part can only be regarded as a novice tutorial at best, and the difficulty is low enough. Ignore it, it is basically used to familiarize players with game operations. Even if you choose the hard mode Delta Force, as long as you pay attention to the crossfire in the corner when rushing into the hotel, give priority to the few militiamen with automatic weapons. Even if the player can't fire a shot at the remaining enemies, they will also be quickly killed by NPC teammates who follow them. From the perspective of the American Army, this part of the game process is a tutorial for novices, but if you look at it the other way around, from the perspective of Aided's militia, it is equivalent to a death mission, although this part is not mentioned in the movie. There are only a few shots of the militia supporting the hotel, but in the game, these people basically rush out to kill people. Unless the start of the convoy is delayed for a few minutes, they don't even have a single American soldier beat to death. It wasn't until the Humvee convoy began to evacuate that a dead American soldier appeared, Sergeant Pillar, who was sitting on top of the Humvee and manipulating the M2 heavy machine gun. Kaylan thought that the first task would be a slightly less difficult task such as destroying roads or ambushing a convoy, but who knew that they would be asked to support the Olympic Hotel at the beginning. This would be a hellish start. Quick! Quick! Get going! Under the urging of the militia leader, these dozen people quickly climbed into the two Toyota pickup trucks parked at the back door. Kaylan also got into the passenger seat of one of the pickup trucks. Both pickup trucks have machine gun bases welded into the bed, and are equipped with an American-made M2HB Laoganma heavy machine gun and a 14.5 mm caliber Deshka anti-aircraft machine gun produced by the Soviet Union during World War II. Kaylan was no stranger to this car. When he was playing in the Ranger camp, they were the first enemies he encountered. However, the two heavy machine guns failed to shoot down the helicopter. Instead, they were hit by the Vulcan cannon on the helicopter. Swept into a sieve. Anyway, as soon as we see a US military helicopter in the sky, we will jump out of the car. Kaylan made up his mind and then rummaged around the co-pilot. According to the settings of the game, on the vehicles of the US military, whether it is a Black Hawk helicopter, a Little Bird helicopter or a Humvee, if you search carefully on the road, you can always find some additional equipment, and at least a few grenades and shock bombs are guaranteed. If you are lucky, you can even find a fully equipped M733 carbine or MP5K submachine gun. These weapons are much easier to use than the M16A2 rifle issued by the Rangers, which can only be semi-automatic and 3-shot. However, in the cab of this pickup truck, Kaylan only found a few rounds of 14.5 mm machine gun ammunition for the Deshka anti-aircraft machine gun. This thing was completely useless to him, and he would never do it. The person who ran behind the pickup truck to operate the machine gun was a living target. "Hey, brother, do you have any extra magazines? Give me a few." With no other choice, Kaylan could only pin her last hope on the thick-lipped pickup truck driver next to her. "Magazine? Axe magazine? Oh, there's one here." The driver held the steering wheel with one hand, and with the other hand he rummaged through the glove box filled with debris and garbage, and dug out a curve. The magazine was thrown to Kaylan. Kaylan took the magazine and took a look. At the bottom of the magazine, he saw a line of Chinese inscriptions mixed with numbers. Northern Industries XXXX Type 56XXX. This was not an AK magazine, but it is a 56 charge magazine exported from China. Fortunately, the 56-pounder is originally copied from the AK-47, and the magazines of the two are completely interchangeable. After throwing the magazine to Kaylan, the driver stopped talking, and Kaylan didn't continue to talk. Instead, he took advantage of the time he was on the road to quickly fill the spare magazine with bullets. In less than 5 minutes, The two pickup trucks arrived at the entrance of an alley just one street away from the Olympic Hotel. The militiamen in the vehicles jumped out and ran towards the hotel. But Kaylan looked around, locked onto a 3-story building with a balcony, opened the door with the butt of his gun, and walked in quickly. "What are you going to do?" Seeing that Kaylan did not follow the predetermined route, the NPC who was with him from the beginning stopped and asked. Since the Americans want to raid the hotel, they must go through the street. This house is the commanding height facing the street. We can go to the balcony and roof to snipe the Americans, Kaylan explained to the NPC. Good idea, the NPC nodded and ran over immediately. It turns out that this guy is the assistant assigned to him by the system, Kaylan thought to himself. When playing the Delta camp and the Ranger camp, there will be 1 to 3 soldiers following him all the time. Even if the player does not act according to the mission instructions, these NPCs soldiers will also always follow the player's side to provide cover for the player. Of course, Kaylan did not tell the truth to the NPC here. Running to the roof to snipe the American troops on the street would only become the target of helicopters in the air, and their legs could not escape bullets. If they really did this, I'm afraid the two of them will become the first 2 militiamen to be killed in the Black Hawk Down incident. Ian's real purpose was actually the car that the informant used as a marker. In the original work, in order to allow the soldiers participating in the attack to identify the target building Olympic Hotel at the first time, American intelligence personnel specially arranged for an informant to park a car in front of the hotel, and a cross-shaped logo was affixed to the roof of the car with eye-catching white tape. If this car could be moved, then the Delta Force raid might not go so smoothly at the beginning. Kaylan and his NPC teammates quickly rushed to the balcony on the 3rd floor. With just one glance, Kaylan spotted the informant's car, a cross with white lines on a black background. Although it was not visible from a horizontal angle, it was if you look down from a high place. It is extremely eye-catching. At the same time, a US military reconnaissance plane was hovering in the nearby airspace, probably helping to locate the attacking US military. In 5 minutes at most, those helicopters full of Rangers and Delta members will appear here. The war is about to break out. Have you seen that car? Kaylan pointed at the car and said to his NPC teammates. I saw it, the NPC teammate nodded vigorously. Why is there such a pattern on that car? This thing may be used as a locating mark for the attackers. We have to move it, Kaylan said. What should we do? NPC teammates immediately asked. Although the AI of these NPC characters is not low, due to the settings of the game, under normal circumstances they will not question the player's proposal at all, unless the proposal is too outrageous. For example, if Kaylan, who is a militia character, says that he wants to destroy his boss aided with one shot, then the player will definitely be executed as a traitor by his teammates in minutes. Let's go. After saying that, Kaylan ran downstairs with his teammates. While paying attention to the reconnaissance helicopter in the sky, he quickly moved to the informant's car. The timid informant had already left, leaving only an empty car parked on the street. Can you drive? Kaylan asked. Yes, the NPC nodded. That's good. Kaylan hit the butt of the gun again, smashing the window glass on the driver's side. Drive this car as far away from here as possible. P.S. Thanks to Meng Luiying for the 520 starting coins. Thanks to bookfriend 20211208190302702 for the 500 starting coins. P.P.S. By the way, do you like this kind of transitional plot outside the main line, or do you hope to continue the main plot quickly? To be honest, in writing this part, I actually wanted to try the Mugen Ryu and Zushin Lu, but you can rest assured that this is just a superficial taste. This book will definitely not be written as Mugen Ryu and Zushin Ryu. This is just an insignificant episode. Of course, if everyone likes it, I can also arrange more such episodes. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 553. The NPC teammate did not doubt Ian's request at all. He very skillfully reached his arm into the car, unlocked the door, and sat in. The informant was nervous when he left. Although he turned off the ignition, he did not remove the keys from the car. However, having a key or not does not make any difference to Kaylan. For a shabby and old car like this, just pry open the guard plate outside the car lock to find the battery cable and ignition cable hidden under the steering wheel. Connect the battery wires, and what is left is a classic shot in many old movies. Rub the two ignition wires against each other a few times to start the starter motor. The informant forgot to take out the key, which saved them 10 seconds. Remember, drive the car as far away as possible. Don't look back or stop until you hear the gunfire, Kaylan finally warned the NPC teammate. Understood. The NPC teammate nodded, lightly pressed the clutch, and then stepped on the accelerator. As soon as the white car drove out of the street, Kaylan saw the helicopter in the sky turn its head and followed it. Americans have been fooled. At this time, the militiamen had piled up a large number of rubber tires and discarded furniture at various intersections and set them on fire. When the US military's Black Hawk helicopters and Little Bird helicopters entered Mogadishu, the sky above the entire city it has been shrouded in thick black smoke. The Little Bird helicopter carrying the Delta Force landed directly in the middle of the road and on the roof by virtue of its small size and maneuverability. The Delta troops wearing beige military uniforms and black helmets quickly gathered together, although they lost markers, but they didn't mess up. Facing the intensive firepower of the militiamen, these Delta members directly seized several nearby buildings, used the buildings as bunkers, and began to snipe the militiamen who remained in the open areas. Kaylan does not intend to go head-to-head with these Delta members. These people are the elites of the elite. Even if the AI's intelligence is far less than that of humans, it can't resist the game system's trick on the AI. In the first half of the arrest operation, these NPCs in the Delta were like looking through the sights and locking their heads. They almost always shot the militiamen one at a time, and they directly eliminated the Olympic Hotel with 0 casualties. Although this group of people now missed the opportunity to break into the hotel immediately, this did not affect the invincible buff on them. Almost every time a gunshot was fired, a militiaman fell down on the street, and the militiamen were shot. The parts are either the chest or the head. If Kaylan went to find trouble with these Deltas at this time, he would probably be shot down as soon as he showed up. According to the game flow, only after the newbie tutorial time is over, Delta Force's marksmanship will become slightly normal. Persimmons still have to be picked on the soft side. Kaylan thought for a while and decided to target the Rangers riding in the Black Hawk helicopter. The Black Hawk helicopter is too bulky to land on the ground, so the Rangers can only enter the battlefield by rappelling. According to the original plot, a Black Hawk helicopter will kill a man who did not hold onto the rope because he was avoiding an RPG rocket launcher. The new recruits were thrown off, but because of Ian's operation, the world line changed significantly this time. The militiaman who was supposed to shoot the rocket was shot dead by the Delta team the moment he leaned out from the balcony, so the recruit fell to the ground unharmed. As the saying goes, if you survive a catastrophe, you must have a last-ditch attack. Kaylan muttered, moving the muzzle of the AK-47 in his hand and pointing it at the rookie ranger who was squatting on the ground on guard. Target, front sight, rear sight, 3 points and 1 line, a distance of 120 meters. There is no need to consider a series of complicated issues such as humidity, wind direction, bullet falling on the arc of the earth, etc. He only needs to pull the trigger, and the enemy will respond. Fall. However, when the heavy recoil was transferred along the butt of the gun to Ian's shoulder, he was shocked to find that the bullet's impact point was a full 20 meters away from the ranger. Not even the dust stirred up by hitting the ground could touch anyone's house. A distance of 120 meters, an offset of 20 meters, Kaylan couldn't help but look down at the AK in his hand. His grandma's thing, can this thing be called a gun? Kaylan glanced at the muzzle of the gun and realized that the rifling inside the barrel had been worn to the point where it was almost invisible. No wonder those black militiamen used the faith shooting method when they fired and didn't aim at all. That's because even if they aimed their weapons, they might not hit. Kaylan suddenly regretted it. If he had known that when he passed by the weapons stall on the street just now, he would have asked them to stop the car to get a few more guns. They all bought them for 0 yuan anyway, and there would always be 1 or 2 in the extra guns. A little more precise. He raised the AK-47 high above his head, and fired randomly at the Rangers who were rappelling, but this random firing happened to hit 2 people who were hanging on the rope and sliding down quickly. The 2 Rangers let out a scream and hit the ground hard. Under the interference of the huge noise of the helicopter rotors and the chaotic gunshots around him, Kaylan could not hear the screams of the 2 Rangers, but this was a game after all. The flash of feedback in front of his eyes told Kaylan that what happened just now 2 Rangers were successfully killed in one stroke. Is this okay? Kaylan glanced at the dilapidated AK-47 in his hand with some surprise. There was no inscription on the receiver of this thing. From the rough boring and milling marks on the edge of the metal key, it was clear that this gun was definitely not made by a stamping lathe in a regular arsenal. It is cut with rough handmade equipment in those small workshops. The tolerances of the parts are so large that they are simply unsightly. If nothing else, just this pile of parts can be successfully assembled and can shoot bullets. That is enough to be called a miracle. All of this is, of course, due to the streamlined and excellent prototype design of the AK-47. If it were replaced with the M16 automatic rifle in the hands of the opposite American Army and copied using this process, it would probably explode as soon as the trigger is pressed. Kaylan killed 2 Rangers with this shuttle, and was naturally met with a fierce counterattack by the other party. Fortunately, he no longer showed his head, walked out of the back door of the house, and walked along the alley towards another small building on the diagonal. Run downstairs. In urban street fighting, the sniper must shoot once and change places, even if the bunker you choose is in the blind spot of the opponent's shooting. Individual missiles, grenade launchers and air support will immediately teach you how to behave. At this time, the Black Hawk helicopter had not yet crashed, and Mogadishu's air superiority was still firmly in the hands of the US military. Kicking the door open, Kaylan ran up the stairs with familiarity. This building was located just behind the Ranger drop point. According to the location on the map, there were the Olympic Hotel, the building occupied by the Delta team, and the Black Building. The Eagle helicopter's hovering rope landing point and the small building where Kaylan was located happened to be connected in a straight line. The Rangers completely focused their attention on the Olympic Hotel and the intersection where a large number of militiamen gathered on the other side. No one noticed that the militiamen who had just killed 2 of his comrades had come around behind them. Kaylan tried to stretch the AK-47 out of the window like he just did, pointed the muzzle of the gun roughly at the Rangers hiding behind the barricade, pulled the trigger and fired out a bunch of bullets. However, the goddess of luck was obviously not always on his side. As the shuttle continued, Kaylan couldn't find the impact point. But from a certain point of view, this can be regarded as a blessing in misfortune. At least the group of Rangers did not notice that there was a militia shooting at them from behind, which gave Kaylan a second shot. Opportunity. Luck is a good thing, but you can't rely on luck all the time. We have to find a way to change weapons. Kaylan thought to himself, but the problem is that his position is really awkward. Aided's militia, Delta, and Rangers are all 200 meters away from Kaylan. Although it was safe here, he also completely lost the opportunity to lick the bag. As for going around to the weapons market to find equipment, that's even more impossible. Let's not talk about whether the weapons market was destroyed by air support firepower. Waiting for Kaylan to go around and pick up the gun, then rushing back to the front battlefield, it is estimated that the Olympic Hotel has already been attacked from the front by a mixed force of Delta and Rangers. The exchange of fire had only begun 5 minutes ago, and more than half of the militiamen stationed at the Olympic Hotel had been killed or injured. This was only the result after Kaylan managed to mislead the landing location of the helicopter and killed 2 rangers. It would be nice if those 2 people were not killed but injured. On the battlefield, the cost-effectiveness of making the enemy incapable of fighting is definitely greater than direct killing. 1 wounded soldier can drag down at least 4 to 5 teammates. They need military doctors to stop the bleeding and someone to carry the stretcher. To transfer the wounded, at least 2 soldiers are required to escort the stretcher, and the remaining teams responsible for covering basically can't even think about moving forward until the wounded are moved to a safe location. As long as 1 American soldier can be injured, it can only instantly eliminate most of the role of the opposing team on the battlefield. 2 wounded soldiers are enough to disintegrate the entire team's combat effectiveness by 90%, and more than 3 wounded, the team can basically withdraw from the battlefield directly. The reason why Operation Aaron went from a surprise arrest operation that was originally scheduled to take less than 2 hours to a rescue operation that turned into a mess and took a full day and night was that there were too many wounded soldiers that held back the entire unit. The retreat of the team, the US Army, is different from AID's militia. Whether it is due to the feelings between their comrades or the pressure of public opinion, they cannot abandon their comrades who are trapped in the quagmire and become the first Black Hawk. When the helicopter crashed, the entire battle situation was actually out of control. This is a standard fueling tactic. To use a more familiar word, it is the gourd baby saves grandpa and sends them off one by one. According to the current trend, it is estimated that in 10 minutes, the Olympic Hotel's defense line will be breached by the fierce firepower of the Delta and Rangers, and it will still take at least half an hour before the large militia force comes to support them. Defend the Olympic Hotel and protect the target person is Ian's main mission. If this mission fails, the game will end directly even if he himself is intact. He is the only outsider who can change the situation of the war. Kaylan thought for a moment, then dropped the AK-47 in his hand on the ground, and took off the vest with the spare magazine on him. As long as he has no weapon in his hand, he is not a militiaman, but an unarmed innocent civilian whom Delta and the Rangers could not shoot. At that time, the United States was not as shameless as it became later. Things like human rights and love and peace were the core focus of their external propaganda. If the news of the military shooting civilians indiscriminately spread, if so, wouldn't it mean that he was slapping himself in the face? Although they would often do this kind of thing in the future, at least this operation was one of the few just acts in the United States foreign military operations. Soldiers who claim to be just should naturally not shoot at civilians. Even if the civilian picks up an assault rifle from the ground and shoots at them in the next second, the soldiers will never shoot at them before his fingers actually touch the gun. The trigger cannot be pulled on it. The only thing Kaylan needs to be wary of is the stray bullets flying around on the battlefield, especially the bullets thrown in this direction by own NPC teammates who have no accuracy at all using the faith shooting method. Although they can't even hit an enemy only 20 meters away, no matter how crudely made the AK-47 is, it still has an effective range of 200 meters. I hope I'm not so unlucky. Kaylan took a deep breath, opened the door facing the front street, and rushed out like the civilians who fled in panic. But at this moment, gunfire suddenly rang out behind him. The shooter was a civilian hiding in the next room, or a militiaman. In Mogadishu, the identity switch between the two was as simple as zipping up his pants. He was holding a gun in his hand. The bullet that just passed by Kaylan was fired from the dark G3, a 3 automatic rifle. Kaylan suddenly remembered a scene in the movie. A black man holding a TV rushed out of a house, and another black man with a gun chased him and shot him to death. Then he was also shot by charging Rangers. In the chaos, there will always be some guys who want to fish in troubled waters and take advantage of the situation. Obviously, this guy should regard him as a robber who broke into other people's homes. Kaylan didn't bother to explain to him. It was useless to explain anyway. Instead, it was the G3A3 in the other person's hand that aroused Ian's thoughts. Since he was mistaken for a robber by the other party, he might as well just become a robber for once and avoid being wronged. These people are all NPCs anyway, and Lan will not feel any guilt if he kills them. Lan ducked to avoid the second bullet fired by the opponent. Lan quickly moved closer. First, he punched the opponent's lower abdomen with a swinging fist, and then hit the opponent's back of the neck with a hand knife, killing him neatly. Put it on. When Lan picked up the G3A3 dropped by the other party, he found that it was not a castrated version authorized by a third-party country, but a German product produced by Heckler/U0026 Kook. Although the maintenance condition was not optimistic, it was much stronger than the AK that Lan just threw away. It's true that a pillow came to your door just after you fell asleep. Lan quickly checked the G3A3 rifle. The random firepower and sustained firepower of this thing are not as good as that of a fully automatic weapon like the AK, but its single-shot power, accuracy, the range, and reliability are far superior to the AK that uses 7.62mm intermediate power bullets. In the old era, many countries even used the G3 rifle as a precision marksman rifle and after installing high-magnification optical sights. Sniper rifle to use. P.S. Let me explain here, because the last time I watched the movie Black Hawk Down was more than a year ago, I remember some of the content incorrectly. The vehicle used by the informant as a mark should be a white car with a sticker on the roof. It's black tape. In addition, in the movie plot, the informant did not abandon the car and leave until the action officially started. This was changed to meet the needs of the plot.